Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Friday night, 7 p.m. Can only mean one thing. It's first live stream of the new year. Um, we are dual streaming tonight, both on my channel and the USS KIDD Veterans Museum channel. And of course, as we can see, we've got Tim NesSmith from the USS KIDD Veterans Museum here with us again. Tim, I know you've been on vacation this week.
Yeah.
How's your vacation and how was your holidays?
Holidays were good. I'm at the age now to where I prefer everything to be quiet. No big, tons of people, not a lot of, the potential for drama is lower that way. So yeah, we had a nice quiet Christmas with family. And then pretty much everybody scattered and went their ways. My wife's been out of the country since she left for Galveston this time last week. So she's been out for a week. She'll be back tomorrow. So I'll have to get rid of this at that point. That's the only time when she's out of town. That's the only time I get to go to it. She hates beards.
Galveston, huh? Is she going to visit BB-35?
No, although she's passing right by it. A friend of hers had a extra ticket for a cruise and asked her if she would come with her because she didn't want to go alone, and so she went ahead and went with her. So she's been cruising, and which is funny because one of her greatest fears is drowning, and so going on a cruise, she was like, "I'll never go on a cruise. I don't see how you went out in the Gulf." And she's been out at sea. She's now got more sea time than I did with my 3 days on KIDD and my well, no, actually I've got more because I did a week. I did 7 days on the Bounty. So 7 days on the Bounty, 3 days on the KIDD. I'm at 10. She's at 5. No,
is
7.
This her first ever cruise?
First ever cruise. She's never been offshore.
Nice. So coincidentally, I had my first ever one Thanksgiving week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, big fear of mine as well is drowning. So I'm apprehensive about getting on small boats.
Okay.
On a big ship, nah, I wasn't worried in the slightest.
Yeah.
So what we got tonight, I went back and listened to our last live stream just to kind of refresh my memory on what all we talked about. And we went over KIDD's service history. We talked about how she came to be a museum ship and what was going on in dry dock at the time. And I think tonight our agenda is to go over dry dock again. And you've prepared a presentation for us to show what types of media KIDD has been in. She's a movie star. She's been in video games. And like I said, you've got a nice presentation you planned for that. So I'm looking forward to that too.
That was just something you had made a mention about Greyhound. And I'm like, well, there's a whole lot more than Greyhound. And so you took my leash off, and that's usually a mistake when you do that. So you've been warned.
I love that. It's funny how you say that because actually last month for Pearl Harbor Day, I went to the USS Alabama. They were doing a historical reenactment on the ship, and I had met up with one of the reenactors after it was all over, and he was an elderly gentleman, and he was dressed up, in I forget exactly what suit, but he got to talking about the ship, and like 10, 15 minutes in, he said that's something to the effect of, I'm going to stop right here because I could go on and on for hours and hours. I'm like, have you met me?
Yeah.
I could listen for hours and hours and hours. What are you talking about?
You proved that in the last live stream. We went 3+ hours. So,
and we could have been longer as well, but I think you were ready to go to bed, and I kind of was too. So
my wife was probably going to kill me if I didn't get off. But there's no wife here tonight, so you're going to have to be the governor on the time limit. So,
well, it's funny you mentioned that too, because you brought to my attention, and we'll talk about this after dry dock. One of the movies she's been in that I had never heard of, which is free to watch on YouTube, and so we'll get into that. So I've got my R2D2 popcorn machine ready to, if we're not here at 2:00 in the morning, I may watch the movie after.
Okay.
So, let's kick off with dry dock. You guys have been since the last time we talked. You guys have really been sharing a lot of updates on the dry dock via videos and images on the Facebook page.
Mhm.
So, if you want, I figure we can start off like in November or so, and then work our way forward. If you want to do that.
Sure. It honestly is not going to be a lot of detail.
Okay.
I looked at I went to our last visit together, and I fast forwarded to the end to see kind of where we dropped off, and I think we had
Okay.
just started blasting at that point. Uh,
Okay.
so and the not the hull. The hull got done in September. So main deck down has been blasted and zinced. So she's all good there. They had just started blasting. Hey, Nala. I'm babysitting a dog in addition to my other two, so she's in here with me since she's not as familiar with the little ones. They'd started blasting the main deck and some of the superstructure. So they, at this point, as of our last dry dock video, which dropped right before we left for Christmas, they have started their working their way aft. What you see here, we got visited by Franklin Clay there on the left with the Aloha shirt, and a couple of his compatriots from the Missouri. They had a World War II, one of their last surviving World War II veterans that they needed to interview. So they flew up to Jackson, Mississippi, I think. Yeah, I think it was
Okay.
Jackson, not Vicksburg. Came across and went north up into Lake Providence, which I've been there twice now. And man, that's remote, way up almost in Arkansas. And they interviewed him, spent a day interviewing him, and then drove down that night to get to New Orleans, like a lightning drive to New Orleans. Got up early in the morning, drove across to Houma, met me in the dry dock, toured around for a couple of hours. And again, there was a governor on me to, you got to show us these things before we got to leave for the airport. And had a good visit. Franklin said that he had never been in a dry dock before because he came on board Missouri right after, maybe a year or so after they completed their dry dock when they were filming Battleship. So I think they filmed, if I remember the chronology right, they filmed Battleship right after she got out of the shipyard, out of the dry dock.
So
before they brought her
she's
back.
had a very recent dry dock. Then I didn't realize.
Well, I mean, that's 2011 when they were filming. So
Yeah,
it's been 13 years. Time flies.
Yeah.
But yeah, they came and they had a good visit. And then Ryan and Libby from the New Jersey came down in early December. We did 3 collaborative videos with them. And Mark, I see your comment. Battleship was a great movie. It's kind of, for me, it's kind of like the Point Break with Swayze and Reeves, Keanu Reeves, man. I have to sit down and watch Point Break whenever I see it, no matter if it's the beginning, 5 minutes from the end, whatever. It's just one of those movies that you hate to love. But Battleship, I will walk away from it and then look at my clock because we got 3 crew members, volunteers in there. And I'll come back in the last 15 minutes when those veterans walk out and do that, that slow motion Jerry Bruckheimer walk down the decks and everything. So yeah, that's movie.
If we're being honest here, I can't tell you how many times I have went back and watched the scene when they get Mo ready and send her out to sea to destroy the aliens. I mean, you got the AC/DC thunderstruck while they're getting the ship ready. It pumps you up.
It pumps you up. It pumps you up. But if you want to see Ryan Szymanski cringe, like physically cringe, talk about Missouri dropping the anchor and Tokyo drifting across the ocean.
Yes. Yes. So
when he was here, I was like, I mentioned it, and he just kind of shivered.
I've heard that is actually something you can do on small boats in real life. But
oh yeah,
They say the damage you would have done to an Iowa class battleship in trying to do that would have been massive,
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
to say the least.
yeah.
But what do we have here? It looks like we've got some of her guns. You guys sent them off to Battleship Texas to be refurbished.
Correct. So these are forward twin 40 millimeters, Mount 41 and Mount 42, and Eric, yeah, no, I'll take some of these visitors because I can pick their brains. Eric's saying I can't get any work done because people keep coming in to go to dry dock. Um, there's more coming, trust me. We all do this. I went to Battleship Texas when she went into dry dock. I went to Orlick when she went into dry dock. I was trying to go to Ingram when she went into dry dock in Tampa, but it didn't pan out.
Did you go to New Jersey?
I did not get to go to New Jersey because New Jersey was happening while we were getting ready to leave. So that coincided too close. So
I know Steve in the chat. He's the Blue Ribbon. He did the New Jersey dry dock tour, and he and I did a collaborative video several months ago on that because I went to Texas as he went to New Jersey, so we got together and talked about that.
oh, that should have been a good discussion. I'm gonna have to go back and look for that one.
Oh, it was a fun one.
Yeah. So I may have actually seen part of that. I may have tuned in and then had to jump back out. But yeah, Travis and the team are working on our 40s. They started pulling them apart, and I mean they are literally breaking them apart down to their bare components. So what you see there is still going to be torn apart even more, I'm sure.
Okay.
Based on what I saw when I went to their workshop in May of 23. So yeah, they're working those up, and Travis sent a nice little picture. I don't know if you pulled that one or not. They discovered for our Mount 42, they discovered the identity of the ship that it came from. It had a
That is
tag.
coming.
That's
Yes,
coming.
it
Yeah.
is coming.
So that was something nice. You see here down in the very bottom where the what do you call them? The shell chutes run through. Water tends to collect there, and so that's something that we're going to get addressed a little bit to try to keep that from happening as much. And then we have actually, people have said, I guess just tuning in, not as familiar with KIDD. How come your guns don't train like whatever? And so in the last dry dock video, I talked about the fact that our guns, up until really the last 2, maybe 3 years, moved freely constantly. The quad 40s and the twin 40s all moved for Greyhound in 2018.
Mhm.
Ace later, I'm guessing that's probably John Yep. I understand everybody's got that issue, man. That's something that Rich Picelli at Pampanito was talking about at the last HENSA conference. But yeah, our guns have moved freely right up until COVID, because of course we got budget cuts, we got staff cuts right before COVID, and then budget cuts because of COVID. And then during COVID, we developed the leaks. And so by the time we started rebounding, Nathan and I were really focused on the leaks and discovering the causes and, doing mitigation, trying to get them patched, trying to find, where other weak spots were. And it just continued, deferring maintenance elsewhere on the ship. And so that's why they still moved somewhat, but not as freely as they used to. You had to put a little bit of effort into it. And with 7 fingers, I don't have as much effort to work with to rotate them. We had some missionaries working with us all through COVID. They were fabulous from the Church of the Latter-day Saints. And
Really?
yeah, interesting cause and effect. COVID comes out, they go door to door and they schedule meetings with people and, proselytize, talk about the religion and everything. And they couldn't do that during COVID. So they try to volunteer in areas where they're stationed, because they're there for 6 weeks. And then there's the possibility that they rotate out and go to another location, or they may get renewed for another 6 weeks at that place. I think the longest one that stayed in our area was 10 months, almost 11 months.
So they're not local to Baton Rouge?
No.
Okay.
Most of the times they'll send them somewhere else in the country or even overseas. Just from what I picked up from these folks, you do have some that are local because of a medical condition or a family situation where they can't travel away, and there's a setup. It's really organized. I was so impressed learning from these kids. I say kids; they're in their 20s, but learning from them about how their mission work goes about. And basically, you have what I call the traveling missionaries. I'm giving the wrong name. Any Latter-day Saints out there, please don't beat me up. But ones that are sent out away from home. The guys go out for 2 years. The girls go out for a year and a half. And then they come back home and they tell, their church what all they experienced when they were out there, and kind of give a mission report, so to speak. And then for the local ones, they do the same sort of work, but they do it in their local community, so they don't have to travel. But we had there for about 2 years. We had just a constant flow of about 10 to 12, sometimes up as high as 14 every Friday for 2 hours.
Wow.
Which was a real, no pun intended here, a real godsend, because our regular volunteers, our older guys, they're more susceptible to COVID.
Right.
And some of them just were the generation, they're like, I'm not going to take a vaccine. I'm not going to wear a mask. Okay, well, the vaccine's your choice, but you got to wear a mask if you're around the public here. Otherwise, that shuts us down.
Right.
So they couldn't come back. So these guys came along, and they didn't have the special skills that the vets did. But what ended up happening was we'd had some missionaries as far back as 2016, but it was only 2 or 4 at a time. And we didn't know how the system worked at that point, how they rotated out. They would disappear, and we'd be like, did we do something that made them mad? What happened? Where'd they go? And then some more would show up later on. And these guys were basically stuck because they couldn't go do their job, but they still wanted to volunteer. And we were one of the few spots where they had been volunteering that now they still could. They hadn't been shut. We opened a lot earlier than some of the other places, which was fortunate for us. And so we were a place for them to be able to do their volunteer work.
Since we're on the topic of volunteering, and I was going to save this for the museum part of the discussion, but let's hit on it now.
Okay.
I know you guys ask for volunteers from time to time. If someone were to want to volunteer at the museum, what could they volunteer for?
Well, if you have a particular skill set, like if you're a welder or if you're a painter or what have you, an electrician, then we've got work for you already. If you don't have a particular skill set, which was the case here with the missionaries, then what I had them doing, I kind of did a little survey with them ahead of time to see what they had, and God bless them. One of the sisters, they're sisters and elders. The guys are elders, the girls are sisters. One of the sisters wrote on her response. She said, "I'm a professional drug dealer, and I have the ability to make you glad when you are sad." And
is that affiliated with the drugs?
Well, see, that's when I didn't know the two things together, and so I when I found out who had said what on the list, I'm like, sister, I said, what's the deal with the professional drug dealer? And she said, oh, I went to pharmacy school, and I'm a certified pharmacist. I'm like, okay, I get it. I said, so when you're sad, I can make you glad. Is that about the drug? She's like, no, because I bring the word of God to you. I'm like, okay, I get that. Okay, sure. Okay.
Gotcha.
She had a great sense of humor. I loved her. She's
definitely
fantastic. But what I did with them, I never knew what to do with them. I had a whole presentation at Hence Mobile in 21 about this. And I had to admit something that I was kind of ashamed of. The missionaries that came before COVID, I really didn't know what to do with them. So a lot of times I'd had them cleaning, but it was something that could come up day to day, and or every week I'm finding something new for them. And I didn't know about the process of how they would carry over 6 weeks to 6 weeks. And they're always in pairs. There's always two of them together. That's how they work. And so sometimes one of the pair will leave, but the other one is still around, and he gets a new partner coming in, or she gets a new partner coming in. They call them companions. And once we got that system figured out, I realized, wait a minute, you guys don't have shipboard skills. And I've been kind of, okay, here, I'll just toss this at you, a little one-day job and everything. But once we figured out that there's rollover, carryover from generation, so to speak, 6 week period to 6 week period, then it's like, hey, we have an opportunity here. So we took them and started doing paint work. Not them painting, but them doing the paint prep, which if anybody in the chat has ever done paint work, 99% of the job is doing all the prep work, getting rid of the old paint, either getting it down to bare metal or getting it down to the bare wood, sanding it down smooth, and feathering. If you've got good paint, leave it alone. The pieces that are peeling up, get rid of it and feather down the edges to where it's a smooth transition, and then you paint. So the prep work is just immense. And with me and Nathan, that takes us forever, if it's a big area. Right where the kamikaze hit. Yes, that's Steve, right?
Yes, that's Steve.
Fantastically dirty work. Hours and hours spent for a large area. The area around the kamikaze hit under our starboard whaleboat, the bulkheads of the deck house. I spent probably about 3 weeks needle gunning that down to get it, and then buffering it with a buffer to get it real smooth so we could repaint. It was horrendous. Eric did that at Avondale. God bless you, Eric. I wish Avondale was still there.
Yeah, you mentioned that last stream.
Yeah,
about those shipyards that shut down over there.
Yeah. So yeah, I had them doing that, and then if one of them left, then I've still got the institutional memory of what we're working on when the new companion comes in. Friday comes along. It's like, hey, we're going to go to the KIDD to volunteer. Oh, what do we do? I don't know how to work on a warship. It's easy. Come on, we'll show you. And they would train them on how to do it. And I'd give them their PPPs, personal protective, whatever it is, equipment, PPEs, personal protective equipment, their glasses, their masks. They already had masks, earplugs, what have you. And then I'd give them the sandpaper, I'd give them the scrapers, tell them kind of what I wanted on this particular area and let them loose. And then I'd go check on another group that was working on another project. So we came up with projects that would carry over. So if anybody in the chat, anybody out there that watches this later, they want to volunteer at the KIDD, or they want to volunteer at one of the other ships, because there's tons of ships around the country. It doesn't have to be USS KIDD. We like it if it's USS KIDD if you're here, but if you're in New Jersey, go see the New Jersey, the Olympia, the Kuna, etc., the Brig Niagara, etc. And yeah, they will gladly put you on projects like that to where you don't have to be an expert. They will teach you. What they need is just you're willing to do it, and you're willing to come back just more than once every blue moon, because that doesn't help get the project done if you're just popping in and then disappearing and not coming back for a year or two.
Right.
So coming back, putting in X number of hours a week, or not a week, X number of hours a month, really helps. If Slater's still in the chat, Slater has one of the best volunteer corps in the historic fleet. It's absolutely disgusting, and we all envy them, the number of volunteers that they have come in, because the rest of us usually are scrabbling to get a ton of volunteers. Yes, Eric, that is Ryan and Libby. That's Libby checking her phone while Ryan and I are running our mouth for the camera.
Yeah, you mentioned New Jersey a few seconds ago,
Yeah.
and there he is, Ryan Zemansky,
There he
right
is.
there with you, underneath the kid.
Underneath the kid. And let me wrap up the volunteer. If anybody wants to volunteer for the kid, go to our website, USSKIDD.com. And we should have a volunteer. There's a support us tab that you can open up, and there's all different ways to support us. And there's a volunteer application on there. So we can use help on the ship. We can use help with the aircraft. We can use help with the grounds. We can use help in the building. It takes a lot to keep that building up, just as much as for the ship. And for the ship, housekeeping is just help with housekeeping is fantastic, because that's one less thing that the staff has to do. They can focus on restoration if somebody else is basically doing some housekeeping.
Right.
Slater says they're lucky seeing Midway and their crew. Boy, oh boy, yes, Midway is its own creature. It really is. It's so different because it's in a Navy town, and people. I mean, they've just got it really. They do it right. They do it right. Not that anybody else is doing it wrong. Slater's doing it right, but yeah.
And your mentor is running the Slater, is he not?
Yeah. Rizzuto has always done a great job with volunteers, from the time he was at Kennedy to when he came to KIDD to when he went to Slater. He keeps refining it all the way up.
Nice.
Thank you,
I like
Norm.
this comment. Yeah, I can attest to that. So there. And let's see. Show you guys what I'm actually wearing.
Tell you what, Texas does a good job too.
There it is. I've got 3 of these.
3 of those. Wow. All right.
Yeah.
See, you do like I do. I stock up on the same design. That way, if I don't wash, I can go, no, I wore the other shirt yesterday.
Exactly. Well, part of it too was one is going to be a keepsake.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I'm weird that way. I get shirts. It's what I do when I go to cruises or, the kid, the Alabama, whatever.
Yeah.
But going back into this, you got Ryan here. So Ryan came down, and as you mentioned, you guys did some videos. You guys picked up a number of subscribers as well, thanks to that.
We got, for the time period, the month after or while we were doing dropping the collaborative videos, we did 3 of them. We picked up an extra 1,000 subscribers just in that month.
That's amazing.
And I noticed Ryan started doing these videos this way, to where they'll drop a part 1 on their channel. And I say Ryan and Libby. Libby does the footwork and the technical work. Ryan has said multiple times, if he did not have his Libby, he would not get all of that done. And Molly is very quickly filling that role, if not already overcome and filled that role with us. If Molly wasn't just spending all of her time editing and filming, we wouldn't be putting out as much as we are for the dry dock. But yeah, they'll do it part 1 on theirs, and then part 2 will drop on whoever he's collaborating with. If it's KIDD, if it's KIDD, if it's one of the other places they're going, and because they've had this huge following from COVID and just built up these huge subscriber numbers, these folks to go to see part 2 are finding other ships that they didn't know about. And so, it's helping the other ships' channels. So that's a fantastic system.
I equate that to, are you like a ship guy in general, or are you just the kid and that's your world?
No, I like learning about other ships. I like learning about military history. I love Louisiana military history, which you and I have discussed offline.
Yes.
Some projects that we would like to do. And that's why when you reached out to me, I was like, hey, let's do a collaborative video, because maybe some of my viewers might like what you're doing on your channel, and
Absolutely.
Maybe some of your folks might like what we're doing on ours. So
I've got,
I like military history in general.
I got something concerning that to talk with you about off camera.
Okay.
Yeah. But the reason I asked that question, for a lot of us, like I can remember when I first got into ships, September 1st, 1985.
Okay.
I can tell you the exact date, and for most people,
Please
that's
don't
the
tell me you
gateway
spent the
drug.
night on board the Kid, because that would make
No,
me feel really old.
wasn't the Kid. No,
Okay, good.
that's the gateway drug right there for most of us. That gets you into it.
Titanic?
Yes,
Oh, is that when Ballard found her?
that is the date that Robert Ballard discovered the
Okay.
wreck, and because that's where most people, it starts off for a lot of people, and at some point you start questioning, well, that couldn't have been the only ship that was like that. There had to have been more, and then you go down the rabbit hole, and you spread out to other liners, you spread out to warships, and I mentioned all that to say New Jersey could essentially be the gateway drug for Kidd and all these other museum ships.
Oh, she is. Absolutely, she is. And what's funny is, and I think I talked about this before, but it's funny how New Jersey and Ryan and Libby have just, like water running through gravel and through cracks, they've just permeated through YouTube to the point to
Definitely.
where just random people, they see my kid shirt and they're like, "Hey, do you watch on YouTube the USS New Jersey's video channel?" I'm like, every once in a while I've seen it, I know about it. "Do you know this guy Ryan Samansky?" "Yeah, I'm friends with him." And they're like, it's like I say I know Angelina Jolie, and they're just, and I mean,
Right.
these are like 70 and 80-year-old men, and they're fanboy, and they're like, "Oh my God, is he as nice as he seems?" I'm like, "He's exactly what you see on camera. It's fine."
That's awesome.
So yeah, it is a gateway drug. Just the fact that we know each other, and that's why I got that question so many times. I started, "Oh, you should talk to Travis at the Texas." I talked to Travis more than I talked to Ryan, because Travis is a big Star Wars geek like me, and so a new Star Wars show comes up on Disney, and the next morning I get a text from Travis, "Did you watch it?" So when we're not talking ships, we're talking Star Wars.
Right.
Lego, how accurate is Kid to World War III configuration? Not at all.
World
But
War
I know
II.
I know what you're asking.
Yeah.
From her exterior, her silhouette walking around the exterior, she's very accurate. The last big thing that we had to accomplish was done at the end of 2019, and we put the torpedo blast shield on. So if you stand and look at her from the levee, she will have the same exact silhouette that she had, that the crew saw standing at Hunter's Point in 1945. Interior, very, very accurate. There's a few small details that we don't have done, and that's going to be the case all the way, because for the rest of her existence, because some of that stuff just doesn't exist. Some of it we have to fabricate. Massachusetts, Battleship Massachusetts, is doing a fabulous job now. They've gotten kind of like Texas has gotten a workshop built for working on guns and everything. Massachusetts has gotten a 3D printing setup going, to where now, like, people go through, and I know the people in the chat here love these ships, and they're just going to gnash their teeth when they hear this, but people go through and they rip knobs off of a piece of equipment, or they'll unscrew the little light cover on an indicator or something and walk away with it and taking souvenirs, or they're just doing it, to break stuff. And Massachusetts has gotten to where they can 3D print replacements for small parts, and they're working their way up to larger and larger sets to make replicas of stuff that they don't have and can't find anymore. So,
how about this fleece jacket here?
Happy in the 1800s. Hank, I don't think that they are ordering them anymore, but if you send me a text, because he has my number, when I get back on Tuesday, I will check and see if we have any of those fleece jackets. Send me your size and let me know, and I will hook you up. Salazar Slytherin. Kid is the most accurate configuration wise of all current ships. One wants her to get the rudder back to World War II.
Got a rudder comment.
Well, you're not wrong, and I got to give credit where credit is due. The thought did not actually cross my mind I was gnashing my teeth. I was like, whenever the divers are down there, because I just hate cutting something that doesn't need to be cut. But the river was going to be like that close, so we had to take everything we could to be able to get out of the cradle. And then when we were in dry dock, the shipyard was like, "Look, we'll put it back. We'll make it just like it was. We'll make that rudder right."
But I thought all you guys took off was the extension, the Cold War extension that was added to the rudder.
Well, we took off X number of feet, and
Okay.
it turns out that's pretty close to the World War II. Pretty close to just that extension. But
Right.
that wasn't by design. That was get it
That
high
was
enough where we
necessity.
can get out. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But then Parks at one point just mused. He's like, and he said, "Well, we don't necessarily have to go back to that. We can, what would it take to go back to a World War II rudder? Didn't you say it was smaller?" And I'm like, "Hey." And so that's when we started pulling plans, pulling blueprints, and looking. And it's like, okay, well, if we can raise the money, we'll lop the rest of that off on the back, and we'll clean up the bottom and get it the right width and the right depth, and go from there. So, and that would make it easier for the return and getting in and out for the future. I see Ozzy's mentioning second rudder to the right. Yeah, Kidd never had the second rudder. That was only the last 4 Fletchers that were built with 2 rudders. Let's see if I can remember them. The Little, the Gregory, the Rooks, and I always forget the 4th one. Rooks was the last one. Gregory was the first one. So number 2 or number 3, whichever one it was. Tim, if you ever come out to SoCal and work out on a Queen Mary, Steve, I will take you up on that. But so far, every time there's been a conference in California, I've been forced to stay home. Midway this year, and in 2015, Iowa. So I don't know. I may just have to get out there on my own at some point and take a vac. I said I'm taking a vacation, like going out of town vacation after dry dock, because I haven't had one other than a staycation in 5 years since the leaks began. So I may go to California. Who knows? I will.
Actually, Tim,
I will take you up on it.
I think we're gonna have to, if you can collaborate with me on this. I think we need to force Steve to do something before you go to the Queen Mary.
Oh, what's that?
I have been badgering Steve since I've met him to go to the Iowa, which is 20 minutes away from the Queen Mary, and he has not been. I think we need to make Steve go to the Iowa before you go to California and see the Queen Mary.
Is that a prerequisite?
I think that should be a prerequisite.
If Tim's going to go visit you at Queen Mary, you have to go visit.
You have to go to the Iowa. Yeah.
Well, let's throw the which one is there near the Iowa? Is it it's not the Jeremiah O'Brien, Lane Victory. Let's do a 2 for Lane. He goes to Iowa or Lane Victory, and when I come out, then we'll go together to the second one.
There you go.
There you go.
I think that sounds like a great idea.
January 15th, Iowa. Oh, all right. He's double.
But see, he's made promises before. I'm going to hold you to it. I'm going to hold you to it, Steve.
Out of the 2, I would prefer to go see Lane Victory, because I've already been on an Iowa. So.
Oh, which one have you been on?
Whiskey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of want to see Big Whiskey myself. So this is inside the ship in dry dock. What's going on in this photo here?
This is the officer's wardroom. And we did part 1. We were talking about target dates for restoration for that particular video, and we did part 1. Hello there. How are you? Wait, I didn't do that right. Let me do my Ewan McGregor impression. Hello there.
Hello there.
Hello there.
Hi, I'm Ryan Zamansky. Hi, I'm Ryan Zamansky.
I already did that on video, so I can kind of need to stop that. Actually, it's an Alec Guinness impression. But we did part 1 outdoors around the Quad 40s. Rizzuto will be disappointed if I don't remember. What am I not remembering, John? Give
Yeah,
me some
fill
context.
us back in, us later.
um, so they started doing some work down below us. It got really loud, so we went indoors into the officers' wardroom for the Fletcher. All right, yeah.
The fourth
I was
Fletcher.
never that good at that. That was always a Rizzuto trick. You could give him a hull number and he would instantly pop out with the name, not even stopping to think about it, and everything you could ever want to know about that ship. It was disgusting, and I envied him so much for that. Although next time I saw him years later at a conference after he went to New York, the next time I saw him, I hit him with just a random hull number, and he's like, "Oh no, I jettisoned all that out one ear to put all the DE stuff in the other ear." So, but he can still do it a little bit. So yeah, this is the officers' wardroom. They kind of made it a little kind of command center for the guys in the dock doing the work while they're working. So you can see it's been stripped down pretty hard to get everything that would be valuable out of it or potentially lost if there was a fire or something. So the table is about the only thing left in there. And that's our props and the rudder.
Since we're thinking of yeah, let's talk about this because I thought this was really amazing.
Yeah, you can see all the blasting that's been done there on the forecastle and going all the way up to the upper levels on the front of the ship. These two guys, the guy on the left is the commanding officer of USS KIDD DDG 100. She's the third kid to bear the name, and she is currently in service and home ported out of Everett, Washington. And the ship, when it was first being built and christened, launched, all that, and fitting out in Pascagoula, the crew would come over all the time for April 11th for our kamikaze ceremony. They would come over for December 7th for Pearl Harbor Day. And then when they got transferred to San Diego, that kind of stopped. Understandably, it's hard to send guys all the way across the country. But a few years ago, when they were moved up to Everett, their executive officer, eventually commanding officer, Matt Noland, he's a Baton Rouge native, and he said, "I want to rebuild this mutual, support and relationship between the two kids. I think it's important." And we were like, "Right on, we're with you." And so
Definitely.
he finagled it to where he would send 2 or 3 guys over, and we looked for something that would be, something in common for the two ships to link them. And Admiral Kidd is obviously the obvious link. So that link became Pearl Harbor Day. So they send them over to participate in our Pearl Harbor Day ceremonies. And then we show them around the town and whatnot. So that has continued whenever they're not out on deployment. A couple of years they've missed because of being out on deployment. And Matt has moved on. I think he's at the Pentagon now. Although he may be moving on. I've lost track of him for a few weeks. So I don't know what's going on with him at the moment. But yeah, the guy on the right, God, I'm forgetting his name. I want to say Cam, but it's not Cam. Anyway, he was saying, I was kind of hoping the ship would be here because, I'm up for re-enlistment and I'm going to re-up and everything. I was hoping to maybe do my oath here. And I'm like, oh, I said, well, we're going down to the shipyard Saturday. You, after this ceremony, you want to do it then? He's like, could I? I'm like, well, you tell me. I don't know what's involved in setting that up.
Right.
And he said, let me talk to the CEO. And so apparently they talked about it at the hotel, and they got there, and he still has to do the paperwork because his current enlistment isn't up yet. But for ceremony purposes, he can do the oath anywhere. And so they got up on the bow, and they shut down the work right behind the breakwater there so that it could be quiet and they could record and everything. And he took his oath, his re-enlistment on the bow of the Kidd.
I love that the Navy allows this to happen too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's fabulous. And what's really neat for me for this is him doing his reenlistment on the KIDD on the 661 for the 100, serving on the 100 years ago. The 993 was in New Orleans for Mardi Gras because they would bring ships up, for the public to tour and everything, a nice public relations thing. And
Sure.
The half of the crew, they're like, guys, we're going to send you to Baton Rouge for a field day on the 661. The shift that's going off. Do y'all want to go tomorrow morning instead of going to the quarter and drinking? And surprisingly, quite a few of them, they had enough that they needed a bus, and they rented a bus, and they sent half the crew up, off-duty crew up, and they came and they cleaned and painted and scraped and everything for the day.
I love that.
I know, right? Sailors passing up drinking with pretty drunk girls, right?
Right.
Yeah, amazing. So they went back, and they're talking the 661 in the museum up, and the other half of the crew that was working all day kind of got a little upset about it, and they're like, "Sir, when do we get to go to Baton Rouge?" And so they all had to set up a day to where those crew members that had been working get their day off for going to drink, and they instead went to Baton Rouge. They all still went and drank and everything and enjoyed Mardi Gras, but they came up to Baton Rouge. And a young man by the name of Barry Hardiman re-enlisted in our enlisted mess deck because it was raining cats and dogs, if I remember correctly, and they did it down in the enlisted mess. Commander Crowder re-enlisted and gave him his oath. And I just ran into Barry maybe about 2 weeks before this picture happened on Facebook on one of the 993 groups, because they've got 2 or 3, 4 different groups on Facebook. And Barry said something about re-enlisting on the KIDD. I said, I've got a picture of that. Do you want it? And he's like, wait, are you the guy that was taking pictures? I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, dude, no, you gave me pictures at the time. I'm like, okay. So he's excited about all this too. And the guys and girls that came this time were their sailors of the year. So I always thought there was one sailor of the year. Apparently there's categories of sailors of the year. So all KIDD had at least 4 sailors of the year, and that's them posing.
Now, is this sailors of the year per ship, I'm assuming?
Yes. As I understand.
These are just for DDG 100.
Yes.
Gotcha.
I say that. I believe so. I don't know how all that works. Like I said, I was surprised that there wasn't just one sailor of the year.
Right.
But it's different categories.
That guy looks familiar.
Yeah. He has a thing about red hats. It's disturbing. It's a little disturbing.
So I'm guessing at this point, you guys are kind of giving them the dry dock tour and showing them what's happening with the ship.
Walking around, showing them what we're doing, what's been done, why, and everything. And what's interesting is they are actually going to be taking after they finish what they're working on now, whatever the ship, I think they're prepping the ship at this point, but they're going to spend about the next year and a half in dry dock. So one KIDD is going to be leaving dry dock as the other KIDD is going into dry dock, just not in the same place.
That's amazing. Of course.
Yeah.
Buddy's asking what happened to the bottom of the rudder. They had to shave off the bottom of the rudder in order to get her out of the cradle so they could get her to dry dock.
If you go to our channel, buddy, there are 2 videos, part 1 and part 2. Part 1's on the New Jersey channel, but we have it linked in our dry dock playlist. You can watch part 1, run numbers up for New Jersey, and then part 2, run numbers up for us, and it explains everything about the Cold War rudder versus the World War II rudder in the part 1 for New Jersey. And in part 2, I'm talking about how we shaved the rudder and what basically what our plans are, what we want to do. And it should be a good view. Hopefully you enjoy it.
And looks like this is just some more pictures of the work that Texas is doing for you guys.
Correct. Yeah, you don't see all of their. Yeah, you barely. I'm pointing at the screen. You can't see what I'm pointing at. The top left corner of that picture, you can barely make out the back end of one of their guns. That right off camera is all the guns that they've been working on all this time.
Steve has a good question here.
That was actually an underwater cut, Steve. We had divers doing that.
In what I think you said 2-3 inches of visibility or whatever it was.
Actually, that was what I had been told initially by the guys up on the surface. But when we talked to the guys in the suit in the water, there was zero visibility. They were basically just having to reach out and touch it and find their previous cut and continue all over and try to keep it level. Yeah, which is why it looks kind of jagged, because you can't see
Right.
crap.
They did the best they could.
Yeah.
So what is this base right here?
That's the base of the gun.
Okay.
So if you look right down at the bottom edge, you see the holes in that plate, flat plate. That's where the bolt holes will go for those foundations. So you'll set that right on top of the foundations that we've built. And then the toothed area is the area where the gears traverse the mount around the base. Hi, Hunter. I haven't seen him in a while. Hope you're doing well. Your holidays have been well. Yes, the shipyard has placed materials on order, and at some point very soon, they'll be sending a team up to start work on the cradle.
Of course, that all dependent on when the water levels get low enough to do that work.
Water levels, and I don't know if I talked about this last time, but it's a state project. The funding for the hull and the cradle has come from the state. We're raising private money to augment that and do stuff that we want to do, see done, so that we don't kick the can down the road for the guys that come after me and after Parks and after Nathan.
Right.
Preventive maintenance. That state money comes with state bureaucracy. So when the committee, they do X amount of work, and then they say, okay, you've done this percentage, and they pay them. It doesn't all come in one lump sum. And so, when the bureaucrats push the meetings back to where they approve stuff, it slows down work in the shipyard. So ordering supplies. Thank you, Eric. God bless you.
Eric with the super chat.
Eric,
which I should
awesome supporters. We love Eric. If it wasn't for Eric, Ryan Zemansky never would have done a high seas history and gotten a bucket thrown at his head. If you want to see, if you haven't gone to our channel to the high seas history playlist, I highly encourage you to do it and look up that video, because you will see a USS New Jersey crew member try to kill Ryan Zemansky, or at least maim him with a bucket to the head. He was, I think he was reenacting Captain Kidd with the wooden bucket, slinging it at the crew member.
So that reminds me with Eric's super chat, Tim. I don't know if you remember this, but last time we did a dual stream, we raised $150 for the museum.
We did
super chats. So Eric's got the ball rolling. Eric's got the ball rolling.
Thank you, Eric. We appreciate it.
The gun here. What are we seeing? What is this rust looking stuff?
This is flash rust. And so what they're doing, they come through, they blast an area, they go back a certain distance, and then after everything has dried, they come back, they knock the flash rust off, because in the humid South Louisiana humidity, they have to, the rust just starts popping up. So a lot of people saw this picture initially on the web, and they were like, oh my God, y'all have been ignoring the maintenance. Like, no. That was not under the rust. That's what has developed afterwards. And God bless them, somebody commented on YouTube, or maybe not on YouTube, on Facebook, and said, in the area where I live, it's not hours before the flash rust pops up. It's literally minutes. As soon as that water starts evaporating off, flash rust starts popping up. And so it was nice to have that independent verification from somebody else elsewhere in the country. But what's interesting to me is with this is you can look and see the gun has flash rust all over it. It's all steel. Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate that.
My pleasure.
1999. I like that.
Who's going to match me?
Oh, we're doing matching. Okay.
Oh, we're matching here.
All right.
Anyway, continue.
Right behind, you look at the deck house right behind it, it's all nice and clean, and it's aluminum. So you have aluminum and steel side by side. It's hard to tell in this picture because of the sunlight on the left side of the picture coming in. But the bulkhead going around the bridge right behind Mount 52 is all rusty, like Mount number 1 here. But to the sides, it's clean because it's aluminum. So they've got steel and aluminum riveted right together, which we've had problems with at the bottom of the deck houses, where Nathan, all through 2023, Nathan and Orrin, B&B, were going through and putting in new metal where the steel had rotted out because the interaction between the two different metals, you had electron theft and the steel was rotting away. So that's something that is going to be going on with KIDD forever, as long as she lasts, because of that electron theft. But what we've been doing is we've been putting an organic barrier between the steel and the aluminum wherever we're repairing it. A little bit of Teflon folded over the steel and through the rivets. Thank you, Steve. Donuts and coffee for all the volunteers. Appreciate that. Well,
I'll have the donuts. I'm not a coffee fan.
I'm gonna tell you right now, Steve, I'll take the money out of my pocket for the donuts and coffee. We're gonna throw that $20 into the dry dock with your permission. Norbrook, thank you so much, sir. We appreciate that as well.
Next time you're in Homa, Mr.
Yep.
Ronnie's Donuts.
What's that?
Mr. Ronnie's Donuts in Homa.
We had a Mr. Ronnie's up here.
Oh, you do? Okay, nice.
We
I
did.
didn't know.
I think it's closed now, but we did have one.
I thought that was a local thing to Homa. I wasn't sure.
I think they did some road construction, reorganizing like an intersection out in East Baton Rouge, and they ran it right through their property. So I think they didn't relocate. I think they just kind of shut it down. If I'm remembering the name of the place correctly, but I do know there was a Ronnie's Donuts here in Baton Rouge for a while.
Okay.
So yeah, this is some of the blasting that's gone on. You can see it's gone all the way up to the Mark 37 Director, and it's hard to tell, but the radar set itself has been blasted in this photo. And then what else you got?
Let's see what we have next.
Aluminum still do not play well at all. You are correct, KLSC. Yeah, we're back at midships here. The on the right of the photo is the ammo magazine for the quad 40s. So the superstructure, the smokestack has all been blasted here. The back of the bridge level, the mast, you can see it goes almost all the way up to the yard arm. It's been cleaned off.
So this would be looking forward. This would be the forward funnel on the port side, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And what you're seeing on the bottom left there is actually the man lift sitting there. You can't see the guy doing the work in front of the stack, because if you could, then he's blowing high pressure water right at me, and I have no wish to go back in the hospital for anything.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. So yeah, they got that stack nice and clean. Just a little bit left there on the bottom aft of it. They even got the racks. And yeah, here's the aft portion of that magazine. And again, steel door, steel combing, aluminum bulkheads.
Now I wonder I'm sorry, I forget the term you use. Flash
rust.
Flash rust. If it pops up that fast, I mean, how much time when they're, I guess, getting ready to prime and or paint the ship, how much time from when they clean that off do they hurry up and need to hurry up and start getting the primer or the paint on before that stuff starts coming right back up?
They go down a good section. So it's been a day, 2 days before they go back to it.
Okay.
That I've observed, and I actually have not observed how they're cleaning the flash rust off. But when they get done cleaning it off, there's zinking behind it. So the zinc will act as a deterrent to any residue that's left after they clean it off. KLCS is correct. They didn't care. They were just about aluminum and steel. They were just trying to get ships in the water and on out to the front. They weren't worried about corrosion. KIDD was never supposed to last 82 years.
Well, none of them were.
None of them were. This is in the gun tub. I'm just at the edge of the gun tub for the twin 40s on the front and 01 level, looking aft toward the smokestack and the boat davits. And again, aluminum ductwork, steel, and that's what's weird. Steel bulkhead there, aluminum bulkhead below it. It's very hodgepodge. I have not figured out a system yet for how they did it, when they did it, and where they did it. These are the gun tubs between the stacks for the quad 40s. That actually is a Nathan Bergeron special right there. When we got KIDD, that was just stanchions and cables and netting going around the edge of that. They had cut the gun tubs off when they cut the quad 40s off and just put railings up. And the foundations were gone as well. So Thomas E. has created those foundations there for us so that we can bolt the quad 40s back in place in the twin 40s nice. Instead of welding them to the deck. Right. And this will help for drainage for water going down through the mount, and it doesn't just pool up and sit and rot.
Right.
Project cost for the restoration, Uncle. Well, the state gave us a little over 10 million, but it's going to end up being more than that. And that's always the case whenever you have a dry docking. So that's why we're raising money privately.
I equate this to basically a car getting into a little fender bender. You know, on the surface, the damage doesn't look that bad, but sometimes when you start tearing things down, the damage is a lot worse than expected. And I know you've experienced that with the ship so far.
And with my car. And with my car. Yeah, I got into a 3-car wreck several years ago, and they tinted my hood. The guy hit me, pushed me into the car in front of me, pushed that car into the car in front of him. And my hood was tinted up a little bit, and my back bumper was pushed in. And so it looked just like surface damage. You know, they'll pull the hood, put a new hood on, pull the bumper, you know, maybe replace the fenders. They got it in the shop, and the chassis was accordioned. And they just wrote, the insurance was like, we're not fixing this for you.
Yeah.
You get a new car. Like, twist my arm. So,
I know, right?
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I was talking about behind mount number 1. You see the steel there already flash rusted, and then the aluminum to either side. And Parks was really interested in this because if you go and watch the videos that he's done about the Johnston, finding the wreck of the Johnston was burning. And of course, steel has a higher burn temperature than aluminum does. Aluminum will melt before steel will. And a lot of this deck house here that we're looking at, those bulkheads were gone. It was just the supports, the skeleton of the deck house still there, and the doors and everything. But the aluminum bulkheads were gone. They had melted down. Right.
Oh, of course, she suffered a fate much more horrific than KIDD will ever suffer.
Yes. Yes.
So here we go. This is an interesting one because we're looking at the touch points. I know this has been a big thing. This is one of the major reasons why she's in dry dock in the first place.
Correct. And we're actually going to do, I mentioned in the last dry dock video, we're going to do a whole metalwork, whole video. Our holidays really screwed things up. Molly was out during the week of Christmas. She's back now. I'm out this week, so our video production has really slowed down at the end of December. But she's working right now. She stopped by today and picked up some equipment from me. She's working on a recap for 2024. And
Excellent.
then when I get back next week, we're going to start work on a video to talk about the hull and how these repairs are taking place and why it's being done in certain areas and all that. But yeah, these are the uprights for the cradle. So if you look at the way the ship sits in the cradle, where my thumbs meet here, that's the keel, and then the tops of my fingers are these touch points that you see on the screen, and they're just stabilizers. They're not really supposed to bear any weight. And none of those touch points where those pads were have my dog is not in the room. I don't know where she's at. She's probably on the couch. None of these touch points have been able to be maintenance since 1962 when she went into dry dock 2 years before she was decommissioned. She went into dry dock again for in 64 to seal over the outlets and inlets for the through hull openings. But they didn't do any other hull work than that. They just sealed them up and then mothballed her. But yeah, these have to be cropped and replaced. So they are cutting out those sections. They go out a certain distance till they get to good metal. They crop it out, get rid of that wasted metal, and put in new metal. And the new metal is actually going to be thicker than the original build. But before they seal it up, they are putting in supports behind. I'm wanting very badly just to reach to the screen and draw where they're doing it, but they're putting in more skeletal structure and attaching it to the skeleton of the ship, to the frames and to the longitudinals.
Essentially reinforcing these sections of the hull.
Reinforcing those sections. So if the ship does slide, 2 or 3 inches one way or the other, which there was that much play in the collars, then she won't slide off of one of those reinforcements and then push the skin of the ship in the hull in. And one of the things that they're going to be doing also is on the collars themselves, they're going to be putting some more not reinforcement, but some rubber padding in the collars so that will absorb some of the play in there, and she won't. I mean, it's only like 3 inches at most, but 3 inches can do damage. So
correct.
Now, that's something they didn't think about in 1982, 83. Yeah.
What's going to be done to the cradle itself to complement what you're doing to the ship here?
We're going to talk about that in a lot of detail in the hull project, hull video. But the pads, we're not going to do a whole lot. It's still going to be the same setup because it's a good system. A lot of people, when we first talked about this, were like, scrap the cradle, it's hurting the hull. And it's like, no, this is a good system. We've just learned after 40 years that we can tweak it and make it better. But you look at our hull compared to, and that's what we're going to do. I'm going to talk about some of our sister destroyers that have gone to dry dock. And when Molly first put up these shorts showing the first steps into dry dock, she's walking around. The ship is literally wet and dripping. She's been out of the water maybe 30 minutes and still just wet and dripping and just junk all over the floor from having submerged and everything. Right. And people are like, scrapper in the comments. Oh, the hull's horrible and everything. It's like, guys, let them pressure wash her first.
Right.
So yeah, the thing that we're going to do is explain exactly what happened to our sister ships and when they went through their dry docking, show the comparison, and then show us in the same manner. And you'll see KIDD actually, as much metalwork as we're having to do because of the touch points, she has lasted a lot longer between dry dockings than our sisters did, because these ships were not meant to survive, they have very, very thin skin. It's a miracle that as many of them are saved as have been.
Right.
Are the blocks closest to us resting on the outer longitudinal girders? Yes. Yes, they are. You've got the longitudinals going all the way up the side. And what this is what people didn't understand about the cradle when we first started talking about this, is that what they've done here is, instead of putting the blocks where the touch points were, which is what our cradle is set up for, they have been able to shift the blocks. And literally some of the blocks that they had set up were below the touch points partially. And they're able to slide those blocks out, reinforce somewhere else, and do the work. And with our cradle, it's concrete. It ain't moving. And there's no way we can design it to where it will move, which is what necessitated coming to drydock. But, if you don't, 29 years ago, I wouldn't have known a damn thing about dry docking. So, it's people just don't know. And that's why these videos are educational.
Oh, yeah.
Will it be flush on the exterior, or will they add an extra layer of steel where the touch points are? Hunter, you may have missed it earlier. They're replacing the steel with a little bit thicker steel on that area. It's not an overlay. It's just going in as a thicker piece of steel in that area. And then they're reinforcing behind that. More work here. And what I'm doing, as I'm going through these pictures, basically I'm going through once a week and photographing what they've done. And so when I get close up to the touch points, you don't really know where I'm at on the hull. So then I step back and I angle upward so you can see where on the ship that work is being done. So this is over on port side, but same sort of thing.
This looks like port side forward.
Yes. That's the 40 millimeter gun tub and the bridge. And then you can see the searchlight platform toward the back, toward the right.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. That's the ID tag for Mount 42. And she came from the Betelgeuse, an attack.
Say it 3 times.
and we were talking about that when this came up. When I showed the picture to Parks was like, Beetlejuice. And I'm like,
yeah.
Is it Beetlejuice or is it Betelgeuse? My old astronomy professors pronounced it Betelgeuse. And he's like, I've always heard Beetlejuice. And so we started asking around, and I went on the net and I was like, how do you pronounce? And I typed it in. And damned if the same program came back with both pronunciations. So
really?
Yeah. So I don't know the proper way to say it, but I've always heard from my professors Betelgeuse, so that's what I'm sticking with.
And I'm going to assume the ship is older than the movie, so the ship did not get named this because of the movie.
Well, according to Parks, the movie's name is a play off of the same inspiration for the star, just a different spelling. Okay. And apparently the spelling for the star's name goes all the way back into ancient lore. It's some sort of demon or something. So
interesting.
It may be the same name, just different spelling, different pronunciations.
And this is an interesting question, and I think your answer can apply to just about any ship, not just KIDD or destroyers or World War II ships in particular.
This question here?
Yes.
Well, the ships weren't made to last. If you think about it, thank you, Richard, another $20. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Richard.
Mark, we were producing ships and planes and tanks and jeeps and trucks and everything, guns, in such mass quantity. Basically, it was beat Hitler, beat Hirohito, beat Mussolini, and we're not going to need these 40 years down the road, 50 years down the road. We need them now, and we need them fast. And so they came up with these designs, and they weren't really worried about electron theft back then. They weren't worried about long-term preservation, which is why I say they weren't meant to last 80 years. Nowadays, I mean, you look at it, the nuclear carriers are lasting. How old is Nimitz now?
Nimitz is like 50 years or
50
something.
something year. It's a little
Yeah.
over 50, I think, 55, almost 60. The
But I think
nuclear
that's
is
more of
meant,
an exception to the rule, though, honestly.
well,
Or,
they're meant to. These are meant to last because that their power plant can go for a long time, much longer than the old steam turbines and the what do you call it, diesels and everything. But the submarines are meant to last and everything. Kid 100 is now, how old is she? She was
she's pushing 20.
christened in '05, so she is about to turn 20 years old. And they're not looking at retiring the Burks for what, another 20, maybe 30 years. So even the destroyers are looking to go that long.
But it was a different time with this stuff. These
Right.
ships were built with a shelf life of 20, 25 years.
Right. In fact, they were stretching them to make them 20, 25 years because we have found some stuff. It's like an archaeological dig going into dry dock. We have found some stuff uncovered as we went through that structural survey, and actually, even before we got to dry dock, we had back in February of last year, we had the electrical failure in the forward fire room, which was causing problems because we had a leak in there, a couple of leaks. And so the pumps were losing power and we're trying to get power to it. We're running generators, running electrical cords down in there. Barry Whitty with Historic Naval Ships, or not, Historic Ships Preservation Consultants. That's a mouthful to say. He's volunteers on this later. Barry came down and started digging into our electrical to see what the problem was. And I was really surprised to find, because I'm not an electrician, tracing circuits and everything. I can help with it a little bit, but I don't know the overall picture of the room electrically. I just know where to find boxes, right?
Yeah.
And Barry discovered something very interesting. The way the aft fire room was wired is completely different from the way the forward fire room is wired. And it all changes on the starboard side. On the port side, they're a mirror image, but on the starboard side, they're different. And you find stuff that should be in the forward fire room, you find it back in the aft engine room, shoved in where you don't find it in the aft engine room. And what it was, they rerouted the electrical around the collision sites of the plane entering the forward fire room during the kamikaze attack, and the exit point and the damage from the blowback from the bomb blast, from the bomb exiting and then exploding and pushing back in.
That's right, because the bomb didn't explode inside the ship.
It exploded. It went straight through, created a donut hole, and exploded about 12, 15 yards or so off the port side. But then all the damage, there's more damage on the port side of the ship in the pictures than there is on the starboard side, because all you had was a collision on the starboard side. He punched through, but then you had an explosion on the port side that kind of ripped it open, peeled it open. Right. And what he found was that they just repaired the hole. They cut the hole open, basically slid the wreckage of the boiler out, put a new boiler in, piped it, and bricked it, and then sealed the hole back up. But they didn't put the electrical back where it was. They just jury-rigged it and worked around it, wired around it, just so that they could get her back to the front. Instead of doing it properly like it was, according to blueprints, they made it work. So, and that's what you find elsewhere on the ship. And I'm sure if you went on Cass and Young and you went on Laffey and you went on Sullivan's, you'll find the same thing. In the Cold War, they're doing things to keep these ships going just a couple more years down the road. They're getting the Adams class guided missile destroyers up and running. They're getting the Forrest Shermans up and running. Even the Sumners and the Gearings, they're making do, getting them a little further down the road. and just, we're not worried about what it's going to do long term because we're not going to need them. We've got more stuff coming off the production line.
Now, is it fair to say that they were essentially going through sort of a technology boom after
Yes.
the war, going into the 50s, which made the World War II vessels more obsolete sooner than they could have been otherwise? Would that be fair?
I would say that would be fair, and I think really, honestly, the reason the Fletchers stuck around as long as they did, number one, they were a good design. They were really well thought out, but the submarine threat from the Soviet Union, the Soviet surface fleet was nowhere near as big as the submarine fleet, and they were throwing all these subs out, and that's a threat. Well, what do you need to counter submarines? You need destroyers and frigates and escorts, and so let's keep these hanging on. We got this building program going. We're trying out these new technologies, the DDGs. They're getting ready for gas turbines. They're looking at gas turbines for the Spruance class coming up, and gradually they just, as the new stuff comes out, they just start dropping the Fletchers off. And we discussed this last year when we were doing the anniversary live streaming with History X and the other destroyers, given them to allied nations who they needed more modern ships, and Fletchers were more modern than what they were dealing with, or their navies had been decimated during World War II. So you look at the 14 nations that inherited Fletchers during the Cold War. All of them are near or bordering a communist country. And so they're around Korea, they're around North Vietnam, they're around the Soviet Union, they're around China, on all sides. And they're down in South America to bolster efforts to have, communist revolutions down there. So, yeah, technology and politics.
So we kind of got sidetracked off of Beetlejuice here. So tell us a little bit about this before we wrap up our dry dock talk.
I did a post on her, but basically she went all over during World War II, serving, and then continued on into the Cold War for a little bit, if I'm remembering correctly. And then not long after World War II, I think she went into like 48 or 50 maybe. And then they decommissioned her and sold her to a private entity, and she was a cargo ship for a few years. But the Navy then built a newer attack transport and passed the name on, just like Kidd's name is passed on. So Betelgeuse, the newer Betelgeuse, went up into, I think, 1970 when they decommissioned the next one, and they tried to really, for that one, the second one didn't have the 40s. The 40s definitely came from this one. But for the second one, they had her in Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, which is why I was thinking initially it was the second one. And they encased her with an inflatable dome over the top of her. So they attached it to the hull and they inflated it, and it covered all those cranes and the superstructure and everything. It looked like a giant igloo from the inside and the outside. And it was an experiment to see, can we put these on these old ships and keep them around, extend their lifespan, usefulness in layup, or do we just do what we've been doing, which is smother everything with cosmoline and put dehumidifiers in and keep it going that way? And so far as I know, she's the only one that received that, but she was still in the shipyard in Philly when Kidd was at Philly. And so that's what, at first we were thinking it was the second Betelgeuse, but it turns out it was this one instead.
Okay. This
somebody's asking, does Congress help with restoration funds? Not for us, but I want to say, and this would be something to ask Shane at Buffalo Naval Park, I want to say that Congress has helped with the Sullivan sinking, and they may be helping with her dry dock next year, planned dry docking next year. But I don't know enough about their funding sources to speak knowledgeably on that. So you would need to check with Buffalo Naval Park. But for KIDD, no, they didn't give us any money.
The only things I know about Buffalo is what Shane has already made public knowledge, which is they have the funds they need to send Sullivan's and Croker to dry dock. That's
right.
That's what I know.
Right, and I think the state of New Jersey, like the state of Louisiana, funded the bare necessities for us. The state of New Jersey funded Battleship New Jersey's dry docking, and there was Texas. Texas got federal funds through the Save America's Treasures grant, and that's something we're going to be applying for in the future. Apparently you can only receive it once, and we're going to be applying for it, but it's going to be for stuff that we're going to be doing in Baton Rouge, for the longevity of the ship. We just didn't have enough. We weren't sure we were going this past spring. It was all dependent upon the river, and if the river hadn't cooperated, then we would have applied for Save America's Treasures for the dry docking. But there just wasn't enough time, because applying for those federal grants is a very lengthy bureaucratic process.
Yeah, I kind of figured.
Yeah.
So to close up dry dock, where is, and how can I phrase this question correctly? Where are you at in the dry docking phase? Are you on schedule? Are you behind? Where are we at? And what all is left? And a very general question, I know, but
no, it's a good question. Initially, before we ever left Baton Rouge, the game plan was, the estimate was, we would be out of dry dock December or January. When we got to Thomasee, there were 3 ships ahead of us that had not gotten into dry dock yet. And specifically our dry dock number 6, because they were large enough that they needed that one. So that put us sitting dockside, pierside, for May, June, July. And in the middle of August, we finally got into dry dock. So that slid the timetable back some. They were working pierside on some stuff, but the hull work and all that was not being done, couldn't be done, because we were still afloat. Once we got into dry dock and they started blasting the hull, we knew about 8 leaks. That's the only leaks that we had. But as you mentioned about unseen stuff, when you start restoring a car or you start restoring an old house, there's always going to be more under that paint than what you know about. So there was a little more that came up, and we're like, oh, well, we need to address that. And some of us were like, oh my God. And some of us were like, yep, I expected that. And, it's just, your experience with ships. So then everybody's had to sit down and figure out, okay, we've got X amount of money right now. We're still trying to fundraise and get more, but this is what we got to work with. So we moved some stuff around, shifted some priorities. Priority number 1 has always been the hull. So that's what we're dealing with. So we got stuff fixed up to where the hull is taken care of, and a couple of things got pulled off of the list. And as we raise private money, which is why I'm still always going, hit that donate button, then we can slide those back in, as long as the timetable fits. But right now it's looking like probably July when we get out of dry dock.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Okay. And that's dependent upon how much money we raise, because if we keep raising money and if they don't have anybody slated for the dry dock, we can just keep pushing that date back and getting all this stuff done to where when we leave and come home, the guys that, when I retire, because I'm not going to be there forever, Parks isn't going to be there forever. Nathan's not going to be there forever. So when we pass the baton to the next guy or girl, then they can have a ship that they can look back and go, I'm really glad those guys did this when they were in dry dock. We don't have to worry about this for another 10 years. We don't have to worry about this for another 20 years.
Right.
And so we're not kicking the can down the road. So yeah, we're on target. The blasting, the hull has been blasted and zinced. They're working on the touch points at this point. They're working on the points on the keel. And actually the keel is a lot better than the keel plating, not the keel herself, but the keel plating is a lot better than what I expected. Most of the problems that we were having was just a little bit off to the port side. For whatever reason, the port side seemed to have the most problems with the touch points. And then the superstructure, they're beginning to blast now. They've got the sewage tank installed, or they've got the sewage tank physically placed inside
Right.
now, and they'll be sealing up behind it, but they're not going to connect all the piping and everything until the hull gets completely sealed up and fixed. And then at that point, they're gonna have to work on the shafts and the coamings around the shafts, the guards. The rudder will have to be fixed. They're working on the shell plating. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Working on the shell plating a little bit higher up in some thin spots, which is going to be in that upcoming video that we're talking about. So they're on track, but it's
so. And of course, when you bring the ship back, is dependent on the river, just like it was getting it out of Baton Rouge. So, what are you going to make it? I guess what I'm wondering is, let's say you get her out. Let's say that it happens in July. She's out of dry dock.
right.
I don't know at what point the river is high or low enough for you to get the ship back. Are you going to meet that time frame?
Again, that's dependent upon the river. Back in 2019, the river stayed up. We stayed afloat from January through August, which was really unheard of. I would say probably not, just based on historic levels.
Right.
So that would keep us from getting in the cradle, but not necessarily keep us away from home. They're looking, other folks higher up than me are looking at different areas that we could go to in the meantime.
Right.
Because
she can't stay in dry dock. She can't stay in dry dock.
She can't stay in dry dock. I mean, one option would be to bring her to Baton Rouge or someplace right around Baton Rouge to where we could tie up and still have public access. But there's not a lot of those spots. So there's a couple of different options that's being explored there. Another option would be to go to New Orleans. There's a few options there.
I'll bring up New Orleans. I know that's been mentioned.
Right. Ultimately, if none of those options pan out, find a way to tie her up there. I don't know that there's any publicly accessible area for something as deep as her in Houma, but maybe we could stay in Houma. Maybe we just tie up in the shipyard and wait until the next high water event in Baton Rouge. So that part is very, very fluid still, but yeah, she is coming home to Baton Rouge. I know a lot of people on the net have been like, "Oh my God, why is she leaving Baton Rouge? Where's she going to now?" And that's understandable because Orlick left Lake Charles and went to Jacksonville. So,
well, she went to Texas first.
Well, she was at Texas in Orange, and then they had some issues with a land developer, and then she went to Lake Charles and never really got where she was supposed to go in Lake Charles. But man, they worked their butts off to make it work where they were for a little over 10 years.
Yeah,
and now she's
been great to have one ship on each side of the state, but
Yeah, a Fletcher and a Gearing in close proximity. That's the only other place you'll find that is Massachusetts, with the Cass and Young in Boston and the J.P. Kennedy in Fall River. So yeah,
Let's talk about
that's where we're at.
let's talk a little bit about the museum building itself. I know you guys have some plans. There's some things you want to do. There's some things you're working on right now with the building. Give us an update. What's happening with the building itself?
Well, anybody who's visited our building or has followed us on social media knows that I hate the building because it was designed by my popular saying is probably not very politically correct anymore, so I'll adjust it a little bit. 3 chimpanzees and a very slow ape. And that's the most politically correct I can make that. The architect is a very esteemed architect, but I tell you what, when you make a building 60 or 70% glass walls and right next to a railroad track and in a hurricane prone area, and it's supposed to be a museum, and UV affects your artifacts, and you can go from freezing temperatures in the winter to 100-degree weather in the summer. That's not a good building for a museum. But yeah, the longer we're just like we're uncovering stuff about the ship and repairs they made during the war and in the Cold War, we're uncovering more and more about the museum the deeper we get into it, the longer we live in it. And we're pretty certain now that the building was never intended to be a museum. It was intended to be a visitor center. So it's a big visitor center. I don't know what they were thinking, but yeah, what we're doing right now, we started Oren Bordelon, who unfortunately has had to move on to his dream job of a federal marshal.
Oh, congrats to him.
Yeah, he's started down that road. I think at the moment he might be in a parole officer position, but he's working toward that federal marshal. He's like on waiting list and stuff. That gets bureaucratized too. But yeah, he started June, I think, May or June, working on a project where he and Master Chief Fred Enders were boarding up some of our windows. We did that a few years ago on the second floor. And it dropped the temperatures in the summer, and in my old position as administrative assistant in that office facing those windows, it dropped it from 90 to 95 degrees inside down to a tolerable 80. And that was fabulous. And before they even started working on the windows, I'll backtrack. Our offices, I'm sure you've seen it. You've been to the museum several times. The offices had glass walls. So we were in a fishbowl. People would walk by, they'd be able to look in and just stare at us as we're working and hear conversations that really shouldn't be heard.
Not for the public.
Not for the public. Not that we're hiding anything, but just personnel stuff.
Well, you still have internal things that
internal workings. And so yeah, I there's a video, and I did not share it, but there's a video where we draped on both sides the glass walls, and then we all had our safety stuff, and it's thick glass. And safety glass. I took a little metal punch and a hammer, and Nathan, God bless him, I love Nathan so much. Difficult to take naps when your walls are glass. You got me, John. Rizzuto's been spilling tea. But I took this little metal punch, and Nathan saved the last one for me, and I tapped it, and man, that thing shattered, and it was just like euphoric, because I hated all that glass. We walled in the office, put a solid wall, put a door with a glass in it, so where you can look in and make sure people are in there. But we can actually lock it, because locking a glass door, somebody just pushes real hard and they can break in, Mm-hmm. And we would literally find people on the weekends rifling through our files on the desk and pulling desk drawers open. So so now we can lock the office door. So that was our first step.
I can tell you I've been in the offices one time.
Yeah.
And I have the proof of when and where and the why and all that stuff. So I attended the book signing
Oh, okay.
Mr. Hornfisher. I
Very
met
good.
Parks that day. That was the first time I met Parks, and
Mhm.
he gave me a behind the scenes tour.
Okay.
So that is my one experience of being in the employee only area. I was
And
I was
that
with the I
that
was
was
with the
after
big
we got
cheese. So
that was after we walled it in. So
yes, it was.
yeah.
It was.
Oh, didn't know you know. John, I have slept in that building overnight waiting for a tall ship to come into town. So yeah, there's just about the only thing I haven't done in there is showered because there's no shower facilities. So
I'll say one more thing about the office too.
yeah.
If when Parks decides he's going to hang it up,
Uh-huh.
if he doesn't want that Titanic model and you guys have no use for it, I know a guy who might be willing to take it off your hands.
Well, it's on loan, so that's going to be something up to the family.
Oh, really? That's it's an on loan one. Okay.
It's a loaner, yeah. Um, but yeah, Gordon Boutwell built that model. He long time volunteered. Several models in the
Okay.
collection were loaned by Gordon. Uh,
Gordon.
Gordon, unfortunately, is passed away several years ago.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, good guy, good guy. But yeah, Oren started walling in some of the outer glass walls outside the office in May, June, and that process has continued to the point to where all of the glass on the second floor is walled in except for the north end of the building. And it has actually created a differential between floors to where now the people on the first floor are either hot when it's hot or they're cold when it's cold. And on the second floor, we're maintaining a temperature. It's not fluctuating up and down based on what's going on outside. The HVAC is actually able to maintain it'll go up a little bit or down a
Right.
little bit, but not these huge swells like it used to do. So
What about that open area that you've got on the second floor? You know, where right when you get to the top of the landing from the steps and where you would walk out for the ramp for the ship, is that
mhm.
going to stay open like that, or are you guys planning to do something like put an exhibit or anything there? What's that area for?
What that has the whole second floor used to be chock full of ship models. I mean, literally, they would bring a new model in, and I would literally have to get the wheelchair out and start rolling around between all the stuff that they'd shifted around to make sure that we were ADA compliant. And then, they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'd slam into a model case, and I'm like, "They got to go wider." And oh, they hated it when they got a new model, and I'd pull the chair out. But we get a lawsuit if we don't.
Right.
Yeah, we had a lot of models and a lot of stuff on loan from the old Louisiana Maritime Museum, and Miss Roseanne Geip, our director before Parks, was able to work with them. We had that stuff for near on 30 years and no end in sight. And they had, it was always on loan until they could get a new building because they used to be in the World Trade Center in New Orleans and they lost that building, that floor. And they were always looking for a new home. And so she approached them and said, "Look, thank you, Skip's Happy Hour. We appreciate that."
Aaron, thank you so much.
So she approached him and she said, "Look, this has been 30 years, free storage. We love, being able to exhibit some of the stuff, but there's a lot of it doesn't work for us for our collection. So can you do one of three options? Can you take it all back, or can you take and sign it over to us, and the stuff that we want to keep, we'll keep, and the stuff that is not applicable to our mission, we'll find good homes for it? Or can you find somebody else to take it, and we would like to keep these items?" And so the third ended up being what happened. And so the ship model collection shrank a considerable amount after that. And we began having room for our stuff that we've collected for our collection. So
Right.
Gabby, I don't know if you met Gabby that day when you were up there. Gabby recently got an award from Louisiana Association of Museums for her work in cleaning up our archives and trying to get everything situated in that regard. But that open area has kind of become an event space. People like looking out at the river, and I'm like, why? You're looking out at an industrial river? It's kind of weird looking, but okay. So a lot of events are held there. And our yoga sessions are held there, but we can move the yoga stuff all around. It's really going to depend on what we are able to do with the exhibits. And that's the other thing, along with walling in all the glass walls, that we're still in the process. We're going to move to the first floor and continue that process as we go into the spring.
One thing I would love to see, and this probably wouldn't happen, but you have that giant model of BB-19 right at the entrance when you walk in.
Yes.
It would be amazing if you guys could get the crest that's over there in that park a few blocks away and do a really nice exhibit for BB-19. Like I said, that's not going to happen, but that would be really cool.
It might happen. It might happen. But the reason I'm smiling is that gets brought up in board meetings about every 2 years, like clockwork.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, they're having rotation and everything. I've been there. I'm older than dirt, right? So I know what's been. I know where the bodies are. I know what's been suggested. As Miss Roseanne pointed out to one of the other staff members, he got mad at one point because he had this idea, we're going to do this, and I said, well, that we tried that once before, and this happened: A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It didn't work, and then I walked away. And I didn't tell him not to do it or anything, but he got mad. He went in and was complaining to her, and she's like, "Did he tell you not to do it?" No. What did he do? He just told me this is what they did, and it didn't work. She said, "You realize if you're in the military, if you're in the Army, he's your minesweeper. Or the Navy, he's your minesweeper. He told you where the mines were. He told you the mistakes that got made so you don't repeat them. He's not telling you not to do it." And he was like, "But I hate history." She's like, "But he's telling you we're not to make the same mistakes." And after it kind of clicked, he's like, "Oh, okay." All right. So yeah, in this particular instance, what you're mentioning, the crest, for those that don't know, the decorative piece that was on the front of the battleship Louisiana from the Great White Fleet, very ornate and intricate and everything. I want to say it's bronze, brass, something like that, is actually on a Spanish-American War monument that's in City Park in Baton Rouge. And ever since the kid came to town, there have been real eager beavers that come on the board or volunteers or whatever, and they're like, "We got to go get that crest." And it's like, it doesn't belong to us.
Who does own it?
It was given to what was the name of it? That thing right there. Yeah, it's beautiful.
It is.
And it's just that brass piece. The concrete behind it is just simulating the bow of the ship.
It's not part of the ship.
It's not historic or anything. It's brick and mortar and concrete.
Yeah.
But I want to say it was given to I'm going to mangle the name, the Spanish-American War Veterans Association. Just like there's a Vietnam Veterans Association now,
Right.
Vietnam War Veterans Association. There was a Spanish-American War Veterans Association. Of course, it doesn't exist anymore because there are none left. And then from there, I think it was given to maybe a women's group or something, and it ended up with Friends of the City Park, and that's why it's in City Park. And BREC, which is the Baton Rouge Recreation Commission, BREC gets hit every few years for a long time from somebody at the KIDD of, "We want that." And they're like, "Well, it doesn't belong to us. It belongs to Friends of the City Park," and everything. So since I have been around long enough now, I know that there have been discussions, and the discussions have been, okay, look, if the park changes constantly, as it should, it evolves. And should they ever decide that they need that land for something else and they don't want to have that memorial there, then their first call will be to the USS KIDD to move the memorial there. Maybe not, the concrete thing, but to move the Spanish-American memorial to the KIDD Veterans Memorial, to the KIDD. And so whenever the next Eager Beaver pops up on the board, in fact, I was at lunch last year and one of my former board members walked up to me and was like, this appeared in the paper recently and you need to make it happen. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We're their first call. We had the right of first refusal. Please don't go bothering Breck. So, because then they're going to be like, doesn't anybody at the KIDD listen?
Well, Tim, let's pivot into our last topic here.
Okay.
So what we Steve and I don't know if Steve's still around, but we did a little surprise live stream Monday night where we talked about the Queen Mary being a movie star, essentially.
Okay.
You've probably heard of the Poseidon Adventure. It's an old movie.
Yeah.
Her most famous movie.
Poseidon Adventures.
Yes. Well, I mentioned that to say that KIDD is a movie star in her own right.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said at the beginning, you have put a little presentation together for us. And I figure we could go ahead and transition to that because, as always, when I'm with you, I'm learning stuff. And I learned that she's been in even more stuff than I thought she was in. So I'm going to go ahead and get this on the screen for us. Okay. And you can walk us through it. Let's see. Here we go. So, take us into this.
All right. So this is from 2014, and this is NCIS New Orleans. Their very second episode, called Carrier, season 1, episode 2, Carrier. The USS Geronimo comes to New Orleans and has bubonic plague, and that's all I'll tell you about the episode. But KIDD was used as a set piece to portray the Geronimo, and they were very, very creative in how they did things because she's obviously not an Arleigh Burke class guided missile destroyer.
Definitely not.
They rented us out for a full week, 5 days. They filmed one day. They did pre-production on 3 days, and they tore everything apart on day 5. They covered up everything that could potentially be World War II, interpreted. So the 20 millimeters got covered up. The K-gun depth charge projectors and all the K-guns, all the depth charge tracks in the back got covered up. They got covered up by quote unquote guns. And I walked up at one point, their crew was really awesome. I really enjoyed working with these guys. They're I don't know what you would call that department, art department, I guess. And he's building a wooden frame around the 20 millimeters. And I see him with some PVC tubing and everything, and he's fitting it and everything. And I was standing there and he looked up and he's like, "Can I help you?" I said, "I was just watching you." I said, "I'm just curious." I said, I know y'all are covering up the World War II stuff. I said, "What's this supposed to be?" He said, "This is a HG-11. And I'm like, "Okay, what? I'm not familiar with that. What's an HG-11? He said, "Hollywood Gun Mod 11. I'm like, "Okay." So it's not supposed to, as long as it looks like a gun from a distance, which is their distant shots. That's what they were aiming for. A lot of stuff they could just cover it up with canvas, like they were, doing cleaning, or they had stuff stored on the deck. You can see here they have tight shots. That's Michael Weatherly coming down the ladder, stepping between ladders there on the bottom left picture. And he's up there in the middle. They've got a tight shot so you on the top left so that you can't really see a whole lot of the ship, and they just follow him down the deck, and then they shoot just to I couldn't get a good enough screen grab, but when you see them walking toward you from another angle, they're just to the right of that HG-11 that guy was building. So you can see just a bare corner of it. Like there's equipment there, but you can't tell what it is. So they were really creative with their shooting angles. And on the levee, you know how all the steps come down the levee to go down toward the river. On top of the levee, they closed the levee, and they built this hospital tent that you see Scott Bakula standing in for the emergency response medical facility. And they covered it, in the plastic and everything. And you can't see through that good enough to tell what's right beyond it. You can't see the museum building or anything, or the casino. It was really interesting to see how they quote unquote cheat the shot so that they can get what they need without seeing what's all behind it.
I wonder, and I'm looking at that bottom right hand shot with Bakula, and behind him it's it looks very overexposed or washed out. I'm imagining that's intentional.
Yep, they shot that at the brightest point of the morning because the sun was coming up, and it kind of, like you said, it washes out in the back. And it looks like a cityscape, which they're supposed to be somewhere in New Orleans, right? But you don't want to see that it's Baton Rouge.
Absolutely.
And yeah, there's a couple of shots where they show Kidd at a distance, but then they spent a little bit of money and put some CGI and CGI'd an Arleigh Burke, and where the levee is and our walkway and everything, they got rid of that and just they put a wharf with forklifts and everything and cargo and everything, and it looked believable.
Was that the one that was next?
No. They're a little bit out of order. That's fine. Yeah, this is.
Oh, look at that! Here we go.
Yeah, this shot top right is one of the only points to where you can tell it's Baton Rouge if you're not familiar with the cities.
Right.
Because at a long angle, they shot from way back away to get the tail end of the ship. And you can see the 5-inch gun and the HG-11s covering the 20s. But in the background, you just barely see port of greater BA, and then the gun cuts it off. So yeah, anybody there would be like, that's not New Orleans.
And of course, the Horace Wilkinson is right there. You can't miss it.
Right, but again, we know the bridges. People watching California and Montana don't. So
very fair point. Yeah, they are a bit out of order.
Yeah, that's okay. So I mentioned.
Actually, let me see if I can restart this for a minute.
Okay.
I'd like to stay in the order that you had them in, if it's possible.
Okay.
Bear with me a second. Let's see.
I got a visitor here. This is Nala. She's looking around the wife's office.
Okay, let's see if it'll stay on track this time.
Come back here. There you go.
Because this is what we should have started with. There we go. Yeah,
so Kidd's first role was in Run Silent, Run Deep with Gable and Lancaster. And she has a prominent role, but she's not seen a whole lot. This was filmed in 57. The movie came out in 58. She was home ported in San Diego, and she got back from a Westpac cruise, went down to New Zealand and around the rim, Pacific Rim, and came back to San Diego just in time to be used to portray the Japanese destroyer. I want to say she was supposed to be the Akakazi, I believe.
I was about to ask that because I see Japanese sailors.
Right. So those are the actors. Most of what you see her on is the bridge level with the actors there. You see her through a periscope shot. And then at one point, you see early in the movie when she's attacking Clark Gable's first submarine. No spoilers. He's going to have multiple ships. But you see the 5-inch guns, number 54 and 55, rotating into position to open fire on the sub. And other than that, you don't spend a lot of time on the ship. The ship is kind of like the shark in Jaws. You're always
Gotcha.
with the sub, and then when the threat comes, now you see the shark. Now you see the destroyer.
Did they need a bigger boat?
Did they need a bigger boat? They needed they needed a smarter boat, is what they needed. It's a great movie. I really enjoy it. I went out and bought a copy as soon as I
This is the one I was talking about at the very beginning, where I said it's available for free on YouTube, so you can watch it on YouTube. I do have it to my watch later list.
Yeah. And the rest of the time when you see the ship, this is the only time you see the whole ship, where it's actually Kidd. The other times it's like the old 50s and 40s movies. You see a model being pulled through a water tank, and explosions around it and everything. So
Okay, let's see. I'm gonna do it. Okay, it was right. I'm sorry, guys. I'm experiencing brain difficulties here. So let me put that back up.
and to give James some credit here, I couldn't get my computer to convert this to a format that this platform uses. So I emailed it to James, and James had to do the dirty work.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, so understandably, Kidd's been in several documentaries. Several of them in the 2000s were The Great Ships on the History Channel, Modern Marvels on the History Channel, and I think it also appeared on Discovery Channel. And then History Channel had something called Heavy Metal, and
I seem to remember that.
yeah, and it Heavy Metal was also a British production, and it had a different name over there, or Heavy Metal was their name and it was a different name over here. I don't remember. But you can find the Heavy Metal one on, and this is the wrong thumbnail. That's the only thumbnail I could find for Heavy Metal. This is Machines of D-Day. But Destroyer was an episode of Heavy Metal, and you can find that actually on YouTube. But yeah, she was in several documentaries like that, and she's been in several more since I've known Parks, because of his and Victor's discovery of Johnston.
Right.
One of the things Parks did, even before he was the director, he said, if we're gonna, they're like, let's do it in London, or let's do it in Boston. He's like, no, I want to do it at Kidd because she's in World War II configuration. And so if they were going to film Parks for these documentaries about the Johnston discovery, they came to Baton Rouge and they filmed on Kidd. So that he was supporting the Kidd even before he was the director.
And for those who may not know part of his story, as he has mentioned many times, that is what the Johnston is essentially what led him to Kidd.
He and Victor came in May of 2020 during the height of the pandemic, to basically be able to walk around a Fletcher in World War II configuration, so they could know what they were looking at when they got down to the bottom, and hopefully found the wreck site. Kidd dipped her toe in the reality TV game. There was a show based out of Baton Rouge called Sons of Guns.
I've never heard of this.
You've never heard of it?
No.
It was a based out of a gun shop here in town. And the gun shop has since changed its name because I think they got 3 seasons out of the show. And unfortunately, the primary character, the primary guy, got into trouble with the law, and he's doing prison time now. And then 2 of the other characters, other people that were on the reality show, also ended up with some drama. One of them, I think the 2 of them were going to get some jail time, but something changed. One of them may have gotten jail time. I don't know. Big scandal, and Discovery just pulled the plug on it. But yeah, our episode was in the 2nd season, titled "Honey, I Blew Up the USS KIDD," and it was interesting to see a reality TV show, because they were like, so this is completely unscripted. And so I'm thinking they're just going to follow me around the ship, as the premise was they're going to come and get one of our 20s working for the 4th of July air show and get one of the 40s working. And I'm going to walk around and tell them about the guns and everything. And in truth, it's scripted. It's just not written down. They're making it up on the spot, because they're like, okay, Tim, we want you to walk here. They're going to come down the gangway, blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay. And so, all right, action. And here they come walking down the gangway, and I walk around the gun and cut. Tim, you're in the wrong spot. You need to be right here. I'm like, oh, okay. And I mean, very tightly scripted, but not scripted. So
Gotcha.
it was an interesting experience. I met a really cool guy who worked for the gun shop, who in reality, he owned the gun shop, not the people that were being portrayed as owning the gun shop.
Huh.
None of it was real. But
reality TV, folks.
Yeah, but yeah, my friend was able to help me later with producing the projectiles that we had made through grant money for the brass 40 millimeter casings that we have, that when we get back to Baton Rouge, we're going to build the racks for the ready service racks around the 40 millimeter guns and have actual brass casings, 40 millimeter ammunition in clips ready to go. So it'll look just like it did in wartime. So that contact was made through my step in reality TV.
Not many people know about this.
Battleship actually came about by accident. Somebody lost their job over it. Not at the KIDD.
Really?
Yeah, not at the KIDD. Battleship was being filmed out in Honolulu with the Missouri. And like I mentioned when we were talking about Franklin, they were filming it in 2011 for release in 2012. And Celtic Studios is here in Baton Rouge. They say it's bigger than any of the studio areas in Burbank and Los Angeles as far as square footage. And we were beginning to get movie productions come into town. And so they had scouted us for some stuff at one point. And apparently they filmed on the Missouri, and they filmed with the Navy on some of the Arleigh Burkes out there. Supposedly, I think KIDD 100 was one of them. And hey, Nala. And they got back to Celtic. They were going to do the post-production and editing and everything in Celtic. And when you're filming the movie, apparently the script is, the pages are cut up into, numbered sections, and they film out of order. And they've got a person whose title is Script E. That's how they pronounce it. I don't know if it's spelled that way, but he or she keeps track of what scenes have been filmed and are done. Well, the scriptee screwed up and didn't film a vital scene, which you'll see the screenshots, I think, on the next panel. So Rihanna is a gunnery officer on a modern Arleigh Burke destroyer. Bless you. And they get on the Missouri, and she's got to go down and take over fire control. And they forgot to film this scene. The big pivotal scene, shoot this shot, take out the bad guys, and they forgot to film it. And that guy lost his job as a result of it. And they're panicking. Jeez. They're like, oh my God, we're going to have to fly everybody back out to Honolulu. We're going to have to negotiate with the Missouri again. We're going to have to get Rihanna off of tour, get her. Oh God. And somebody was like, hey, we've got film crews here in Baton Rouge. The KIDD is right down on the river. We've scouted it before. I guarantee you they have one of these rooms. And so real quick, they called up and they ran down here on Veterans Day. And wow. Yeah, because we were shooting the 5-inch gun at that point for salutes for Veterans Day ceremonies, Memorial Day ceremonies. So I was in the gun, and the assistant director was like, I need you. I need to look around. And I'm like, okay. It was Thursday, so all of our volunteers were there. And the gentleman on the bottom right, Garrett Lynch, he's the rightmost person in that photo. That's Rihanna up close on the left. Garrett was there, and I said, this guy knows the ship better than I do. Garrett, take them around, show them whatever they want to see because they're looking at possibly filming. Okay. We went up, we got the call, boom, 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 put the gun back to rights, cleaned everything up, and I get back to catch up, and he's about to walk off. And I'm like, okay, so did you see what you needed to see? Yeah. And I'm like, okay. I said, think it might be useful? Yeah, definitely. We're going to be back in touch. I'm like, okay. He said, I want to talk to you about your old guys. I'm like, what about them? He's like, they're on your staff. I'm like, no, they're volunteers. He said, okay. He said, I'd like to use them. I'm like, well, all you got to do is ask them. He's like, can you get them here? I'm like, yeah. So I paged them. They all came back. There's Miss Molly.
Hey, Molly, how are you? Hope you had a good New Year's and some good holidays.
So they came back down, and he said, guys, would you like to be in a movie? And they're like, no. Just bluntly, no. And he was kind of like taken aback. And he's like, why not? And they're like, we don't want to have to learn lines. And that was the guy on the left there between Rihanna and Garrett, Mac Mackinson. And he's like, we don't want to have to learn lines. And he's like, well, what if you just were extras in the background? You didn't have to learn lines. Oh yeah, then we'll be in your movie. So they called up, they rented us out the day before Thanksgiving of 2011. Get there at like 4 a.m. They were going to be there till about noon. And meantime, they had talked to these guys, and they got 3 of them. 2 of them were World War II vets. Mac was a Korean War vet. That's Bill Long in the top photo. That's the only scene that he appears in the movie. Garrett is seen in several. Mac is in 1 or 2 scenes. But yeah, essentially they filmed in this room. This is IC plots, internal communications and plotting. They're standing on their right, in front of them. They're facing the fire control computer, the Mark 1A fire control computer. And essentially Rihanna comes in, and my favorite scene of the movie. I'll skip 99% of the movie, and when this scene starts coming up, that's when I'll jump back in and watch it. She comes running up this ladder. She steps into the doorway, and she kind of hangs on the doorway for a second. And Garrett looks over at her, and he's like, "You're you're a gunnery officer on a destroyer." And she's like, "Yes, sir." And he's like, "You ready to play with the big boys?" Like, he's a destroyer sailor in real life. Both of them
yeah.
are, but they're playing battleship sailors.
Exactly.
And volunteers on the Missouri. And he's like, "You ready to play with the big boys?" And she's like, "Yes, sir." He's like, "Well, come on. We need all the help we can get." And so she jumps into the crew. And you just have reaction shots, and they have the big moment, fire, and bam, they hit the kill shot from that scene.
Oh, yeah. Let's light these mother fire.
Yeah, right.
I love it. I love it.
So yeah, these 3 guys, initially they didn't want to learn lines and everything, and the AD actually tricked them. They walked up to some aide, one of his aides walked up, and it's like, we need you guys to sign this stuff. And they're like, "What is this?" They're like, if you want to be in the movie, you got to be in it. You got to sign this. And so they signed. It was a whole bunch of paperwork. They didn't want to read it. They signed it and everything. And then they get out on the ship, and he starts handing them pieces of paper. And he's like, "So these are your lines." They're like, "Wait, we weren't supposed to have lines." He's like, "Well, you signed up to the Screen Actors Guild, so I can give you lines." So,
wow.
Yeah.
To be fair, though, he's got one of the coolest lines in the whole movie.
Oh, I know, right? And it kind of chapped them a little bit. They were kind of a little disgruntled until they found out they were going to get residuals every time the damn thing plays, right?
Well,
so they would come on Thursday after it was all said and done. They would come on Thursdays, and I'd be like, "I saw you guys on TNT on Friday nights," and one of them would be like, "Hey, it played on Saturday on TBS and everything." "Oh, well, I got a check just the other day. It was $1.32. I only got 80 cents." "Well, you were in fewer scenes than I was." And it was bragging points for years after that. It was a fun shoot.
What's we have next here? Oh, that's the NCIS that we covered.
It definitely pays to read the fine print. KLSC.
Here we go. Of course, the biggest one.
The biggest one was Greyhound. They started talking to us in 2016, and they finally got to town December of 17, January of 18, and filmed on board. And just the biggest starring role, honestly, the kid has had.
Definitely.
Yeah, we had fun with it. I was running social media. Molly wasn't around at that point, but I was running social media at the time. And when it came out in 2020, and so you know how they'll do in-depth interviews in whatever magazine with the star. Right. Well, I didn't have access to Tom Hanks, so Kid is the star of the movie. So we did an interview with Kid, talking about her movie career and her military career and what she does now as an educator and everything. And we had a lot of fun with that. And then when Oscar time came around, you know, you'll see full page ads come out in these trade magazines for your consideration for best actor, best actress, whatever. And we did that on social media with that to get Kid, you know, best lead actress in a dramatic role. And then when she didn't get the nominations and Sackville didn't get the nominations for best supporting actress, we had articles about, you know, ageism in the nomination process, and it was a lot of fun. People got a kick out of it.
I thought you did meet Tom Hanks.
No, I didn't have access to him to interview him. Okay. Yeah, I did meet. Yeah.
Okay.
He's a very nice guy. He lives up to his reputation.
Yeah, I see, and because you've talked about this experience in depth on a podcast that I had listened to, but it's been a while. And
Armchair Commanders, for your viewers, if you haven't checked out the Armchair Commanders podcast you should check them out because they're a lot of fun. In fact, we did something with not High Seas History, History X a couple months ago, where one of them came on and we talked about the worst military movies.
I did watch that.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And apparently they're going to ask me back because normally the person coming on gets to choose the movie he wants to review. And they basically told me I was reviewing Greyhound. So they're like, we owe Tim another shot so he can pick one that he likes. So they're fun. They're good guys. These are some of the behind the scenes shots. And when you asked me about this, I told you they basically had a no cameras rule for the set.
Right.
And apparently the Kid crew was the only ones that were following that rule because movie people were snapping photos and everything. And I'm like, I thought there was a no thing. Yeah. Oh yeah. You know, they're watching our social media feeds. We can't do anything. I'm like, okay. And I had at the time a crappy little, flip phone, Captain Kirk flip phone, which I missed that thing. I loved it, but it doesn't take pictures or video like my smartphone does now.
Indeed.
But yeah, they had barges all around the Kid and cranes, and you can see in the bottom right, they're lifting a green screen behind the area that they're shooting.
Right.
Which, just like I was talking about NCIS New Orleans, they're cheating their shots. They're focused in specifically on that area, and they're putting the green screen behind it. They had about 2 green screens that they could move around, huge things like sails on a sailing ship. At one point, they didn't have enough guys holding the 4 lines, at each of the 4 points on the green screen, and the wind was smacking the yard arm and the mast. And I'm like, we need to have a talk, and we got it worked out. They got more manpower on it, but yeah, just a little 10 mile an hour, 15 mile an hour wind was dragging them all over the place with the green screen that big. You can't really see it actually you can. Top right, if you look over the statue sitting on the bench and the
sorry. I was trying to zoom in and it flipped.
Yeah, it's not going to let you. But you see the little white boat. The little white boat is pushing a little small barge with a tent on it.
So
and there's a big black boom. No, top. I'm sorry, top left. I apologize.
Oh, sorry.
See, yeah, that big black boom where you just had your arrow.
Okay, yeah, here we go.
It goes all the way up, and the camera's on the end of it. That boom, apparently there was only 2 in the world, and that sucker was the most expensive thing on the set. And they have 4 guys, and it basically works like a seesaw. And they had it timed down. They had practiced to where them moving the camera with that boom with just 4 guys pushing up and down, it's counterweighted. That simulates, when you watch the movie, the ship going up and down. The ship's not moving; it's the camera that's moving, and it worked out really well. I just that first panel where you see the ship crashing through the waves, it looked very realistic. And you can see all the lights on the city dock in front of us as well. For that light shot on the bottom left, if you look behind the lights, you see another barge tucked up right against her port bow. They had water cannons on that thing that simulated the waves crashing. They would get the other little barge. There's another little barge top left picture. You can just barely see it under the bow. 2 little barges to either side, these huge water cannons set up, and man, when they blasted it, there was one shot in the movie where you're standing at the very bow, you're on the deck and you're looking toward the ship, toward the guns, and you see water crashing up from either side as she plows through the waves. And that cameraman was in fact, the camera guy that you see standing on the depth charges on top right, he got on the bow and emptied his pockets out, anything that could be damaged by water, and he got a waterproof casing or something for his camera, and he sat down on the deck on the bullnose, and they timed it out, and he starts filming, and I mean, he got an enema.
Wow.
All that water. I mean, it's forceful water. All that water coming up.
Yeah.
He had to go back to the building and change out and everything. But he did it for the love of the craft. And some more behind the scenes footage, close-ups.
And there's Tom Hanks right there.
Well, that might be Tom. It's hard to tell with that resolution.
It looks like it. I'm assuming that because that looks like a captain's.
Yeah, no, it's supposed to be him. It's supposed to be Kraus, but it may be somebody else. But I think that is Tom, because usually if they had a distance shot, they might have a double for him, or a shot, from the side or behind him. Somebody his height that would double for him every once in a while.
Okay.
These were a bunch of great guys. You can see the extras all scattered around there, and I think no, that's not the one. Those guys have created a Facebook group called Greyhounds, and it's a private group. They let me be in it, and they still maintain contact with each other.
Nice.
They're a fantastic bunch of guys. They went through the boot camp. It was impressive seeing the boot camp. So this is the finished product. For those that haven't watched the movie, CGI
USS Keeling.
Fantastic. The USS Keeling. The hull number, we provided them with hull numbers for canceled Fletcher contracts, and there's 3 escorts that you see. There's supposed to be 4, and you hear about 4, but you never see the 4th one. And all 3 escorts are actually historic ships that you can visit now, playing fictional roles, fictional names. One's in Poland, one's in Canada, and then KIDD is here in the U.S. And that's what I like to call the money shot. They may not call it the money shot, but for me as a ship geek, I'm looking at them plowing through all 3 ships, plowing through the waves, and just
it's a great shot.
It's a great shot. I love that shot. So KIDD is the USS Keeling, call sign Greyhound. A lot of the magazines got it wrong. They were saying it was the USS Greyhound, but that was just her radio call sign. And that's the shot. I have a GIF file of an animated GIF of it plowing through.
You did send this to me as a GIF, but for some reason it didn't. It just converted it as a still.
Yeah.
Well, what was KIDD's call sign?
She had a couple of different call signs that we know of. For World War II, she was Evil Eye. Evil Eye. Because our email newsletter that we had for a while was the Evil Eye Opener. Want to get that back up and running again once we calm down and get away from dry dock. And then at some point in Cold War era, she had Cartful, Cartful.
I like Evil Eye better.
Evil Eye's better, and I always want to say it's Dead Eye, but no, it's Evil Eye.
It's like New Jersey. It's got all these different nicknames that I've read about, but Black Dragon is easily my favorite.
Was
I
that her
like
call sign, or was that a nickname like Pirate
just
of
a
the Pacific?
nickname. Yeah,
Okay, so like
she
Pirate of the
was. Yeah, she had Big J. She had the Black Dragon. She was Old Blue Eyes. I like the intimidating ones because she's an Iowa class battleship. She should have an intimidating nickname.
Yeah, and I think Lexington is the Blue Ghost, and every time I turn around, there's some ghost uh, because
It's
the
true.
Japanese kept thinking they had sunk them, and they kept coming back.
Queen Mary was the Gray Ghost
Gray Ghost,
in the
yeah.
war.
So we were Keeling, call sign Greyhound, and the other escort that you see the most of in the movie is HMCS Dodge, Her Majesty's Canadian ship, call sign Dickie. And Kidd and Dickie team up on a U-boat at one point, and she's played by HMCS Sackville, which is up in Halifax, Nova Scotia, in Canada. She is a Flower class corvette, and really a fun group to work with. I've never met any of them except for Sherry Richardson, and I think Sherry is retired now with that group. But whoever handles their Twitter account is just fun. We play off each other on social media all the time on Twitter. Whenever we get goofy with the hurricanes and everything.
Nice.
They had a hurricane hitting them at one point in 2020, 2021, somewhere in there. We had a hurricane entering the Gulf, and it was a really weird picture from satellite. The arms of the two hurricanes linked up over Bermuda somewhere. And it was
Wow.
like, they link up now, like Voltron. What's going on, Dickie? Help
For
us!
real.
And Dickie's like, they're on us. So they're a lot of fun. ORP Victor. This is a Polish ship, call sign Eagle. And you see Eagle a little bit, not as much as Dickie in the movie. And she's played by the ORP Blyskawica. I'm mangling this name, I know, Gdynia, Poland. She is older than any of our U.S. destroyers. She's older than the Cavalier in Britain. Definitely older than the Vampire in Australia. I think the only destroyers that might be her age or in the vicinity are some of the Chinese destroyers that they bought off of the Soviet Union that are preserved. But she fled from, let's see, slept aboard. Ah, that's awesome. I'm always happy to hear people who slept on board the ship or toured the ship when they were kids and still stay in touch. We love that. Thanks for saying that, right? I appreciate
And
that.
Wright served in the Navy as well.
Served in the Navy.
721. Thank you for your
Here's a question
service,
for
sir.
you, right? So this is something that's come up recently online. Did your experience on the Kid inspire you to go into the Navy, or were you already planning to go into the Navy anyway? Let us know in the comments. I'd be interested in hearing that. But yeah, Blyskawica, she fled Poland the day before. She and a couple others fled Poland the day before the Soviets and the Nazis invaded, and took refuge with the British Navy and served with the Royal Navy until after the war, and then returned to Poland. So she represents Poland's wartime navy. And then the fourth one was HMS James, British ship, call sign Harry. You never see her on screen. She's only mentioned and heard in radio transmission. Sorry, John, I'm curious. I'm just curious. And she was a tribal class destroyer in the novel, and only one tribal still exists today, and that's HMCS Canadian ship Haida in Hamilton, Ontario. So if you want to see what the James would have been, then you can go to Ontario and see the Haida. USS Austin. Actually, I knew I was going to serve since I started reading about the attack on Pearl Harbor. Okay, so that probably predates Kidd. So good to know.
Definitely.
Good to know. Thank you for serving, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And not I'm
It's in
not
this
named
name.
for the ship, Aaron. That would be cool, but no. That's not where I got my name from. Oh, we could that's not the orca, is it?
The what?
The orca?
The orca? Not
Yeah,
familiar with orca.
sure you are. Jaws.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay. Didn't make the connection. Sorry.
I'm seeing Roy Scheider just leaning on this mast right here with the gun.
Oh no, that's an airplane, dude.
Is it? Oh my God,
That's
my
an
vision
airplane.
is terrible.
Yeah,
Jeez.
yeah. We got another sleeper from the kid. Thank you, Andre. 3 or 4 times in the mid 2000s. I may have been one of your tour guides. This is some of the special effects magic here. They spread all sorts of stuff all over the superstructure in the hull. This is not CGI. They sprayed this stuff, which I was
Wow.
very concerned. I'm like, are you going to tear my paint up? But there was a clause in the contract where if they tore something up, damaged something, they had to come back and fix it. Which some of the water blasting did tear up some of the paint, so they came back and fixed it. Like I said, great production, great relationship with Greyhound.
Excellent.
It starts from the top and goes down from what the crews have told me. If the people up top are really concerned about historical accuracy or concerned about the welfare of the place, the location that they're filming, then it trickles down, and the entire crew for Greyhound was just top notch all around. Never had any major issues. But this is whatever they spread was simulating the icing that they were experiencing in the movie. So that's what this is showing. And just more CGI. They took, and I never got to see the submarine because I was always at the ship. They were filming in 2 locations at once, on the soundstage and at the ship. And so I never got to go to the soundstage during filming. There was a day where they wanted me, before they started filming on the soundstage, they were already, I think they were already filming at the ship. They may have just been setting up and not yet filming, but they wanted me to come look at their replica of the pilot house set up on the gimbal so they could throw them all over the place, 30 degrees in either direction.
Right.
And I went to the soundstage that day and looked around, and it was really impressive. I did not. They built the sub on the soundstage for some scenes. I think this is all CGI here, but when I say they used Sackville and Blaskowicz, what they did, they scanned Kidd, and then they scanned those two. And then before we even started doing anything in Baton Rouge, they sent a crew to Nova Scotia, put them on an active Canadian ship. They went out, they filmed the oceanscape, and then they put all this stuff together in the computer for these distant shots like this. And that's what you're looking at. And to me, it looks fabulous. Some people complained about the CGI, but I think they were being a little too critical. This, to me, looks really good.
You're always going to get complaints from someone about CGI. Kind of is what it is.
Yeah. And this is some close-ups. They're passing each other, shooting.
That reminds me, and I don't remember if I asked you this last time we streamed, but there's a shot towards the end of the movie where there's torps coming in both directions, and the ship essentially threads the needle and misses both. That was based on something that actually happened to the kid.
I don't know if it's based on there or not. I did tell Aaron Snyder that story from the kid's service. I don't know. I know they were still tweaking the script as they went along once they got to Baton Rouge, because I sat in for a week up in the pilot house while they kicked the script around and walked through it and started making corrections as the military advisors were sitting there saying, no, you wouldn't do that. No, you can't have these same guys in the bridge the whole time. You're going to have to rotate people through to be accurate and everything. So they really worked on the script all the way up to the end. And even while they were filming, but I don't know if I asked Aaron at one point if he had stolen that idea change the script and plug that story in or not, from Kidd doing it. And he didn't answer. He answered another question that I had asked and never got back to that question. So I don't know if he did or not. If he did, hey, it's a great story. It got Commander Roby on the Kidd a Silver Star for rescuing an air crew and avoiding the torpedo that way. We were moving much slower than Greyhound than Keeling was, though. We were almost at a standstill, and he just reversed rudder, reversed props on one engine and full forward on the other one, and just basically made a 90-degree turn. So Dale Dye was huge military guy, influencer for military consultant for movies since Platoon, Saving Private Ryan, pretty much anything Hanks works with. I think he gets Dale in there. Crusty old Marine. The first time I met him, he was giving inaccurate information and about something, and I kind of looked over and Schneider was like, get in, because he's telling the crew something that I had told Schneider about, and Schneider recognized that wasn't the case, and he's like, get in. And I'm like, I don't know this guy. And he's like, get in. And so I walked up, I was like, excuse me, and kind of tried to correct him without, not embarrassing him or anything. And I was like, would you like me to demonstrate how this works? And, yeah, demonstrate it. And so I demonstrated it, and it kind of conflicted with what he was saying. He's like, and then he started asking questions and everything. And then it was funny because we went to the next place, and he's like, do you work here? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I need you here. I'm like, I'm going to be here the whole time. I'm not going anywhere. And he grabbed Schneider, and he's like, I need this guy in my back pocket the entire time. He's like, you haven't met him yet. This is Tim. Tim was not going anywhere. Tim's going to be here. Tim goes with the ship. And he's like, no, I need him. You get him on staff. Get him on staff now. Sign him up. I'm like, okay, give me movie money. I'll take it.
Right?
Yeah. No, I never got the movie money. But Dale was very much, during boot camp, he drilled those guys on a military funeral. He wanted to make sure that was correct.
Good.
This is not on Kidd. This is, they measured, they photographed, and got paint colors and everything. And they built the captain's quarters, the import cabin, on set. And of course they made it a little bit larger so they could, and the walls moved so they can film from different angles and everything. Everything they built on set, the walls could detach and move away so that they could film from any angle, which was really ingenious. I thought they did a fabulous job with that. So this was his import cabin. And just a close up, if you want to know what was filmed on Kidd, everything exterior wise was Kidd. If they're on the bridge, on the pilot house level like this, and they're on the outside of the bridge, there's one way you can tell if it's Kidd or if it's the set on the soundstage, and that is if the bridge is tilted, or if they're moving back and forth, that's the soundstage. If they're sitting still for just a few seconds and they're cutting away, that's the Kidd. Or if they're at a little bit of a distance and you can see the Mark 37 director sitting up above and the lookouts on that level above, that's the Kidd. Everything else, in anything indoor, CIC, the pilot house, the bridge, the pilot house, indoors, the sea cabin indoors, that's soundstage. There's one scene indoors on Kidd, and that's in the wardroom when he's sitting down having breakfast, and he's got two sailors in there for disciplinary action. And just another scene. That gun director right on his shoulder right there looks a little too clean. I would say that is probably soundstage. Ours should look a little more weathered than that. This was the most recent thing we were in. Disney Channel came to town. They were specifically looking for historic sites. So museums and historic sites all around town got a part of this. National
Nice.
Treasure, Edge of History. It is connected to the movies slightly, but I watched the second movie. I have never seen the first movie, and I watched our episode of this one, and I didn't watch the rest of it. But if you come to the KIDD, you see the top right picture. Our gift shop is not, if you've never been here, our gift shop is not on the second floor. So they built that. We moved stuff out of the way, ship models out of the way and everything. And they built a gift shop right there.
And behind the guy right here is that model of
The
USS Louisiana that we were
Right.
talking about earlier.
Right.
So this is the main entrance right here.
Right. And that's the only two scenes there on the left that you'll see the KIDD. We're only in the show maybe 5 minutes.
Okay.
But most of it is indoors in the museum. The bathroom that you see in the show is not our bathroom. Our bathroom is not that large and not that ornate. I'm still trying to figure out where that bathroom is. That's somewhere else in the city. But I do like that shot on the top left of her across the levee. And the P-40 Joy replica, P-40 replica. It is not an actual P-40, and I'm still working on that video explaining the origins of our P-40s, plural, because there've been two of them. Has been in this one that we have now has been in 3 movies. The first one was Tora, 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 along with a bunch of other replicas. Movie 1941, Steven Spielberg ventured into comedy after Jaws, and he was going to have a whole series, 1941, 42, 43, 44, 45. And I saw some behind the scenes stuff. Apparently, one of the big directors, Brian, I can't think of his name. One of the big directors in the late 70s, early 80s, basically came to Spielberg and said, don't make fun of the World War II generation. This is not going to end well. And he's like, no, it's a comedy. People understand it's a comedy. And this movie's great. I love the movie. It's hilarious. Mm-hmm. But it tanked. It just tanked. And so the other movies never came about. This P-40 basically sat on a trailer, and John Belushi plays this crazy pilot. The whole movie, if you don't know about it, is kind of based on the Great Los Angeles Air Raid, which was a war scare right after Pearl Harbor. And they thought the Japanese were bombing and attacking Los Angeles. And it was just a big scare. People were paranoid. Something happened. Then word spread, and all of a sudden the Japanese are invading. And so that's what 1941 is based around. And John Belushi is chasing a Japanese squadron of bombers all up and down the West Coast, doing what John Belushi does best, which is act crazy. At one point, he's flying the plane, and he reaches down and he's got a big bottle of bourbon or whiskey or something, and he just pops it off, spits the cork out the open cockpit and down, guzzles it down while he's flying and tosses it out. It's hilarious.
Was it John or James that was in Animal House?
John was in Animal House, one of my favorite movies of all time.
Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor?
Exactly. Isn't that so ironic? So yeah, the Joy was in there, and then the other one on the top right was a movie that was done in filmed in early 98, called Yuki. For the American release, it was going to be called Solitude Point, but it never got an American release except here in Baton Rouge for 2 weeks because they filmed it all here. Yeah. And follows a Korean War veteran and his wife, and it's about her getting Alzheimer's and how the family copes with that. And he loses his business before the movie even starts, the backstory. And he takes a job at a local veterans museum. They don't name us, taking care of their aircraft since he's a pilot. and you see him cleaning the Joy and imagining what's going on at home. You don't know he's imagining it until later, but yeah, you see him just jump down off the ladder and race down our hallway in the museum to get home to his wife because he's afraid of what's happening to her.
You just made me think of something. And the museum itself, and I don't know if mission statement is the correct phrase, but is the museum meant to honor all Louisiana War veterans or specifically World War II Louisiana veterans?
That's a good question. It started out when they acquired the KIDD. It's actually in the paperwork established the legislation establishing the Louisiana Naval War Memorial Commission, which is why it has naval in it, which is our oversight agency. We're a non-funded state agency. And that's when you hear me talk about the board, that's the commission that watches over the museum and the ship. And we're employed by them, but we're not state employees. It's a whole thing. We could do a whole episode on how crazy we're set up. But originally, it was set up as a memorial for the state's Navy and Marine Corps veterans. The Coast Guard, the Air Force, the Army, they could go spit, But over time, that has really been kind of cast aside because we honor all the vets. You go out to the Memorial Plaza right outside the building, and every branch of service is represented.
Correct. That's why I was always kind of confused on that.
And our Hall of Honor, all branches are represented. So yeah, the museum has evolved beyond its original mission statement, and we honor all Louisiana veterans. And honestly, KIDD, beyond the exhibits in the museum, KIDD and the exhibits in the museum too have come to the Memorial Plaza is specific to Louisiana. The Hall of Honor is specific to Louisiana. Everything else in the museum honors really all veterans. KIDD honors all veterans of all eras. And we have exhibits on the American Revolution, War of 1812, all of that, Civil War.
Right. So other media that the ship has been in, of course, is what we're looking at right here.
Video games.
Is it going to disappoint? Is it going to disappoint you if I tell you I do not have the KIDD in World of Warships?
No.
Good.
I don't play World of Warships. I'm a video game addict. I have to stay away from this stuff. So I would lose my job.
I don't know if you've watched some of my regular streams where I'm flying solo, but I've shown a lot of warships content. One of my buddies has the ship, and he has donated us footage of the KIDD. Okay. Because my reason for this, and you're going to love my logic, I refuse to pay $35 in real money for DLC in this video game when you can pretty much get an entire game for that price. Or I could be spending that $35 at the museum.
Buying merch at the museum. Yeah. No, I totally get that. And honestly, video games have evolved from Destroyer Command here, which was out in the early 2000s. I stopped playing in the early 90s when X-Wing and TIE Fighter were out. I love those flight simulators, and I'm a Star Wars nerd. It's a perfect storm. And I got an expansion pack for X-Wing, the first one that came out, and got off work at the KIDD, went to the mall. Cortana Mall was still around back then. Picked up at the electronics boutique my pack that I had pre-ordered. Went home, picked up Burger King on the way in. Stuck the little 3 3/4 inch disc into the drive, start uploading, and I eat my Burger King and everything, clean the dishes, sit down, I start flying. And I'm the type that I've got to beat every mission. I finally beat all the missions, right? I didn't mean to sit there and play all of the expansion pack in one night, but I did. And I look over and the sun's up. It's like well up. And I'm like, oh my God, what time is it? And I had 15 minutes to throw on some clothes and get to work. And that's the day that I basically stopped upgrading my computers so that I could play the latest and greatest. I finished out the TIE Fighter and X-Wing series, and I had not bought a video game since then. And now it's evolved to where it's kind of pay to play. Like you said, in order to get further advanced in the games, adventure.
Yes, Steve. I'm sorry. I had to
Yeah.
show that one.
You gotta buy, and I will play a game to death, but I will not buy, and that helps me not feed my addiction. So
Yeah,
it's worked out for me. And like you said, I'm not going to pay for something that doesn't exist in the real world. That's not physical.
exactly.
I hate the subscription stuff that Adobe and Windows and all that has now. I want the disc. I want the program.
So, Tim, before we call it a wrap for tonight, there's 3 little short videos you sent as well. We're going to take a look at these real quick before we go.
And I want to B-Wing expansion. Yes, I played the B-Wing expansion, and there was somebody.
X-Wing and TIE Fighter, great games.
Let's see. There was somebody that was making a comment about 1941. Let's see. Yeah, Wright brought it up. Mr. Butarski has no GPA, 0.0. One of my favorite lines from Animal House.
What are we about to check out here, Tim?
So they are filming for Greyhound, and one of the videos links that I'd sent you can find it out online. Belongs to somebody else, so copyright wise we can't show it, but they fired our 5-inch guns, but they didn't fire them like we fire them. They didn't load it, the breech comes up, press the trigger. They were kind of shy of the mechanism for that, and I get it. If you're not familiar with it, don't do it. So what they created was a sleeve that fit into the gun barrel, about as long as my arm, and in that sleeve they'll lower the barrel down, and in that sleeve they fit their packet of gunpowder, pyro mix, whatever it was that they were putting together to make the shot that they felt would look good on camera. And little wire that triggers it comes out, and they tape it to the port side, because they're shooting from starboard. They tape it to the port side to where it's out of the shot, and then some guy stands back there with a little push button, click, and boom, right? So so they're firing the guns, and a lot of the shots you'll see boom and then boom. But they wanted one instance to where they wanted all 5 guns, and unfortunately number 5 doesn't traverse, doesn't rotate. And so they wanted a salvo. So they got 1, 2, 3, and 4 turned and loaded the sleeves up on them, loaded the guns up, and they did a firing here. And they were shooting at an angle where you see the American Queen, which she's down in Homa right now. I think they're cutting her up. I hope somebody is able to save her. That's sad. But yeah, the American Queen is docked outboard of her because they couldn't get the dock. They couldn't get the dock reserved because the steamboat line already had it scheduled. But they angled the cameras just right to where they could get the gunshots without the boat in the background. So what you're seeing right now is them firing.
Let's take a look.
And we got around the no camera clause because our director David Beard was filming this from his office. You'll see his glass,
I see the reflection on the right hand side.
Yeah. No sound.
Are you guys not hearing sound? I hear sound.
I don't hear. Oh, wait, let's see. No, we're not hearing sound.
Huh.
Or at least I'm not hearing sound.
Is anybody else having issues hearing sound? Let's hear that again.
No, not for me.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, Steve says no sound.
Huh.
Probably
I don't.
some sort of setting somewhere.
Probably so. That. Well, sorry, guys. They hear us, but they don't hear the audio from the thing.
Yeah. So you're hearing it in your headphones, right?
I am.
Maybe if you take the headphones offline, they'll hear it. Just a guess.
Let me turn them off, and we'll play that again.
You can just say boom. No? I don't know. Some sort of setting.
I'm sorry, guys. I don't know why it's not doing sound.
We got a 993 guy on board. Hey, Tannerman.
But
So,
we can
yeah,
still
that
look at
was
the videos. So let me pull up the next one.
I think the next one's kind of cool because it's in the dark.
It is. This is way cool. Let's see.
It was kind of ironic when they were doing the days that they were shooting. They had just built a brand new branch of the Baton Rouge library downtown, the downtown branch, new building, and it's got this arching overlook with no support underneath it. It just hangs out like a ship's prow, levitating off the ground. And they were doing all this shooting, and then word came down that that arch that's out there is just they found problems with the building, and it possibly can break off the building and collapse. And like,
wow,
this is like, no, we did not do this.
So let's take a look at this one. Still no sound.
No sound. So you can see the boom camera silhouetted there, and they've got lights on the city dock off screen, and they got lights on the barge on the other side, along with cameras. And you can see the lookouts up on the.
See the boom going down.
The boom's going down. Here it comes back up.
Okay. Yep.
And then it goes down. So they're going to call action in a second, and you're going to see everything light up, and then the gunfire.
Wow. I love it.
Yeah. And what you can't hear is after the 5-inch guns go off, you hear a choo, 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 choo. And what that was the 40 millimeter that they got operational and recoiling with nitrogen. It was that choo, choo, choo was them firing it and the recoil going on. But they added CGI flames in later. In real life, wouldn't the firing be almost instant with all guns at once and not sporadic? Yeah, at least the first shot. If they're firing salvo, you'll have 4 going off all at once. But if they're just in local control, all aiming at the same target, yeah, it'll be whenever the gun crews can get it out. Because it's not automatic loading like some of the Cold War ships were later. It's individual crews loading it and everything. So not every crew is going to be as fast.
Okay. And
did you have to give a heads up to the city ahead of time about the noise? Yes, actually, that anytime we fired the guns ourselves for 4th of July, for special events, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, that sort of thing, we had a list at the biggest 10 different agencies with the state and with the city, alerting people. The most important one was EMS, because when you call 911, we would alert the 911 call center, because whenever we would fire, inevitably somebody old enough to remember the Exxon explosion of 1988 winter of '88.
Oh, wow.
All up and go, Exxon's exploding. And they were
Wow.
like, nope, that's just the USS Kidd. Calm down. It's okay. You heard 3 booms? That's the Kidd. Because we would tell them how many shots.
Right.
They would 911 would light up whenever we did it. So yeah, the movie company was required to do that.
Okay. Last one.
Yeah, and this is a scene where the keeling takes damage, and you have a firefighting crew that's responding. And this is off of my little flip phone because I'm on shore.
Where is the actual fire at?
That's the Quad 40. That's between the stacks. And their special effects guru, his first name's Eve. I don't remember his last name. Long time in the industry. He was just talking about, I'm going to set this sucker on fire. And I'm like, excuse me, what? No, I didn't talk about that. And we had the cause to where if I wasn't comfortable with something, it doesn't happen. And so the director was there, and he's like, Eve, I told you to get with Tim about that. Well, yeah, I told him what I was going to do. He's not comfortable. No, they got no damage from the fire. I got damage from water blasting paint off the ship. There was no damage from this fire. And that's what this story is about. Eve basically was like, okay, I'll set something up. We'll bring you out. And if you're not comfortable, we'll find another way. So he brought me out to Celtic. That was the only other time I got to go out to Celtic during the filming, because it was vital that I got to see what they were going to do with the gun. And he had it all set up and had a little demonstration and was just pouring flame all over this thing that this contraption had. It was just like somebody had a flamethrower and they're sitting there cooking it, right? and they got done with it, and he's like, "Come here." He walked over. He's like, "Put your hand on this." I said, "You put your hand on it first." So he holds it up against his face and everything. He said, "Here." And I felt it. I mean, the cloth was just cold as could be. And then he pulled it off, and underneath the contraption that they had, it was a piece of steel or something. They had it smeared with some sort of jelly-like and everything. And he said, "Feel that." And I felt that, and that was cold too. And it's like April, so it's hot. So it was cold. It was cool to the touch versus, just temperature outside. And he said, "Your gun is going to be completely smeared in this." I said, "What is it going to do to the paint?" "It's not going to do anything." I said, "No, what is the jelly going to do to the paint?" He said, "Oh, nothing. It comes straight off. We wipe it off with water." I'm like, "Okay." I said, "You're wrapping the gun in the cloth?" "We're wrapping the gun in the cloth, some of the gun in the cloth, not all of the gun, because we can't have some, all of it." I'm like, "Okay." I said, "What is the fire going to do to what's underneath? Because there's fiberglass insulation on the deck, on the ceiling of the deck underneath it." And he's like, "I'm glad you said that. I did not know that." "Okay, so," and he turned to his crew. He said, "So we're going to lay the jelly all over the deck, and we're going to put the cloth on top of that too." He said, "What else?" I said, "Well, that ammunition locker behind, ammunition magazine behind it." I said, "A lot of historic paperwork in there." I said, "I can't have that catching fire or any blistering going on in there." He said, "What's inside of it?" I said, "Fiberglass." He said, "All right, we're not going to put the cloth on it, but we're going to smear that with jelly too." I'm like, "Okay." He said, "How do you feel?" I said, "If you can accomplish all that, I'm good to go." So we inspected it one last time. They had, basically, it was like 4 sawhorses, 2 in front and 2 to either side, that were lower than the gun tub, and they smeared the gun tub as well. The gun tub was layered as well, so they wouldn't blister the paint. And he had it all set up, and it just looked like little burners, like you would have, for cooking, and gas, and they had it set up, and they lit it. It goes up, and then they start spraying it, and they start dialing the gas down. And it's very simple, stupid, but yeah, it was interesting to see how they made that happen. In the movie,
Right.
it looked like a big fireball. And he did some big project in New Orleans years before, and he was very proud of saying, I, s- I had an explosion the size of blah, 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 3 blocks wide or something,
Mhm.
and it didn't burn the quarter down. So your ship is safe with me. I'm like, prove it. Prove it.
Right.
I hear a lot of people boast about stuff, but I want proof. This
Right.
is too important. So
And
again, a great crew, great crew. Loved working with them. Uh, we had something filming on the levee 2 years, 3 years ago, and the location manager was Achilles Montalvo, was the location manager for Greyhound, and he called us and he said, I want to get a little money for the kid. I want to use y'all for a pass through. Use your elevator to get the equipment from street level up to the levee. He said, we're not filming the kid. We're not filming anything. We just need to pass through the building. And so we're like, yeah, sure. So I stuck around and kept the building open and everything. And people from the Greyhound crew were also working on this television series, streaming series. And they're walking up and they're like, oh my God, Tim. And they'd run up and hug me and everything. Got to go to work. I'm like, yeah, bye. And it
good
was
seeing
nice.
you.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's nice, and I still see people every once in a while. Hey, I worked with you on Greyhound, so they really good crews. Everybody that we've worked with has really been a good group, which is apparently not always the case because I've heard some horror stories from some of our sister ships in the historic fleets.
Really.
J.P. Kennedy up in Massachusetts apparently had some run-ins with some of their crew when they were filming 13 Days, and Alabama had an instance with an artifact when they were filming Indianapolis on board. So you never take for granted that it's going to be a good crew. You got to watch out for your artifact.
Indianapolis, that rings a bell.
Nicolas Cage, the sinking of the cruiser Indianapolis.
Right.
Yeah, they used Alabama.
It's been a hot minute since I've seen that. There was another movie
It
Alabama
was
was
straight to
in.
video. It only ended up in theaters in the Sanger Theater in Mobile. kind
That
of
that
like
might
they did Solitude Point for us.
That's probably why I don't remember it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Alabama doubled as Missouri in another movie. I forget
Under
which one it was.
Siege.
Under Siege. That's it. Steven Seagal. Yes.
My friends will not watch that movie with me anymore.
Uh-oh. Why's that?
Because I've toured Alabama and they haven't. And Steven Seagal.
So this isn't Missouri. This is Alabama.
Freezer runs over, hits one switch, and all of the mess deck goes dark. And I'm like, that's bull. I say something else with it, but that's bull. There's like 16 switches to turn all those lights off.
Right.
And they're like, shut up, get out of the room, go away.
But Tim, I don't think I've got anything else.
Okay.
Do you?
No, I'm good. We're at the 3-hour mark again. You've let me run off at the mouth. How many people are still here?
44.
44?
Yeah.
You people sit here and listen to me run off at the mouth like this, man. Y'all are hardcore.
So somebody asked me about that actually earlier in the day today. When I've got you on, I've got like Steve on. I forget how long Shane and I went on, but it was probably an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that. And like, man, you're really into this stuff. I'm like, man, when I get these people on that have all this knowledge and this information, I want to just sit there and let them talk and just absorb the information. Like I was telling you the story of the earlier, but the guy at the Alabama, he's like, I'm going to stop because I could go on for hours. I'm like, have you met me? I can listen for hours.
Well, I mean, John is on from Slater, when I get on History X with John and with Shane and Connor and Ken, it's a good time because for my part, I don't get to see John every time. I mean, I didn't get to see him this year at Hensa, and we all are scattered across the country. Rarely does a dry docking like this happen to where, like, I hadn't seen Franklin since Albany, and before Albany, I didn't see him. I think I saw him before that, maybe in Mobile, 2 years before that, and maybe in Wisconsin, like 3 years before that, and before COVID. So we see each other so few and far between. We talk via email, and now with Messenger and stuff like that, and text and everything, we're talking on the phone and all that. But it's different seeing and being able to sit and spend time and have a conversation about stuff. And so I did not go to Hawaii. It was too expensive. I got to go to Albany, Mobile and Albany.
Okay, so you actually just answered this question. You did
Yeah.
not go to Hawaii.
But yeah, doing these sorts of things with John and Connor and Shane, and I did one with and Ken. I've never actually met Ken Stano in person. I've only met him doing live streams like this. Karen at Cobia in Wisconsin. I did a live stream with her in June, and I haven't seen her in forever. So this format is great to be able to visit and share information and everything.
Definitely.
And it's great for people to be able to learn more about it. But you asked me to sit and listen to a podcast, I get so bored. People ask me, do you watch these videos, if it's a topic that I'm interested in? Yes. But sitting and listening to people chat, it doesn't interest me. So yeah, I'm amazed that there's 44 people sitting here listening to us talk about stuff. But yeah, I love the support, and I love talking to people that like to talk about what I like. So that's why you get me on live stream. But yeah, if I ever thought that we would be making money on a YouTube channel sitting talking about ships, I would have laughed at you.
And we topped $100 again tonight.
Did we?
We did.
Fantastic.
We sure did. Thanks everyone for the support and not for me, but for the museum, because that's what this is about.
We really appreciate it. We really do. We couldn't do it without you. We do it for y'all, and you can be guaranteed every last cent is thought about very seriously about how it is spent. So
perfect.
Thank you, Skips. We appreciate you. Appreciate you, Lunar. I see Lunar all over the place. New Jersey. I see him on History X.
I'm glad he's here supporting the kid.
I don't know if all these guys were following you before we started doing this, or if there's some cross-pollination going on, but I really hope there's some cross-pollination going on, because you got a good channel going.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And
by the way, before we go, I wanted to ask, somebody in chat last time said that they have a boat and they would be interested in going and visiting some forts. So if you would, please email James or email me, and let's see if we can get something going.
For real. You got a few minutes. We're about to wrap it up here, Tim. But if you got a few minutes after, I'd like to discuss that with you. If you
okay, yeah, absolutely. I can hang out a few minutes. I just need to check and make sure my dogs are behaving.
Absolutely. All right, guys.
Matt. Hello, Matt Dominique. Yeah, email me at the museum. Let's see what we can get going. Mm-hmm. Oh, Karen.
All right, guys.
Is that Karen related to you?
No.
No. Okay.
Is a regular though. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks, guys, for watching. We appreciate you guys as always. Remember, I do live streams weekly every Friday evening, 7:00 U.S. Central Time. Be sure you are subscribed to the kids' channel to see when they put out new videos and when they go live. And that's it. Okay, that's all I got.
All right. Hit that notification, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. I think Miss Molly, if she's still on, she was aiming for our recap Sunday or early in the week. So
looking forward to it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you, James.
Thank you. And let's see. I got an outro here. Let's see if it'll play. I've actually never done an outro before. And I can't get it to work, so I'll just do it the old way. Let's see.